All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for today's policy session of the Phoenix City Council. Sorry, a few minutes late. We had a long executive session immediately preceding this meeting, but without further ado, we'll get right to our business. We'll start out today's policy session as we start out all policy session, seeing if whether members of this council have information and or follow-up requests for our city manager. Any information from members of this council? Who wants to go first? Don't all raise your hands at once. Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the streets. I want to thank the fire department, police department, Washington School District, and I believe the Governor's Highway Fund for a great bicycle safety rally last Saturday at Metro Center. We had a good turnout. The kids enjoyed learning bicycle safety and had a great time riding the bikes. But I know there was a lot of effort put in by staff, and I just want them to know it was appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Any other members of the council? Councilman Gates.
Thank you, Mayor. We were very excited last week. The North Mountain Business Alliance, which has gotten very active in District 3, just east of the Metro Center area, received a $100,000 CDBG grant for beautification along 19th Avenue. This was due to a lot of hard work, both of the folks in the North Mountain Business Alliance and the folks here in the city of Phoenix, and particularly Neighborhood Services Department. So congratulations to NMBA for that. And also we'll be having our March coffee chat in District 3. It will be next Tuesday, March 10th, from 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. at the original Breakfast House, which is located on North 32nd Street and is named by Yelp as one of the top breakfast places in the city of Phoenix. So if you haven't been there yet, check it out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other members of the council? Announcements? Follow-up requests? Councilman DeCiccio.
We have a couple events this week that I think that are going to be fun and exciting. Tonight we're going to be meeting with the Arcadia Neighborhood Association. I don't know if Richard Ray is here. He's been a leader out there. We're going to be talking about the Wright House, and that's been a major issue for this council. We're still negotiating, and we're going to be pulling together a group of community leaders and neighborhood leaders, along with the person who wants to develop or actually use the Wright House as a basically a place where others would be able to go to. We're going to try and get all the people together and come up with a plan, if it's possible, to get it done. The other is this Saturday we have the other bike event that we've had. We want to thank the fire department on that. We've had over 300 helmets to donate to children, and the last one was really successful. We had probably close to 4,000 people at the whole Transportation Day event, and I thought that turned out really well. And I think that's about it for right now, Mayor. Thank you. But we're call my office at the. It's going to be at Madison Elementary this weekend for Saturday. And then, oh, I forgot about this part. I get to judge the American Legion. Every year they have an oratorical contest. They bring in kids from all across the state of Arizona, and for the last 2 or 3 years they've allowed me to be a judge, and it's been fantastic. They have to come up with a speech at that time about one of the amendments in the Constitution, and they don't know what it is until they get there. So they literally have to come up with a presentation, a speech, and an argument for whatever it is that they believe in on the Constitution. It's fantastic, and these kids, I should call youth, are just amazing. I mean, they're amazing at how fast they can think on their feet. Looking forward to it, and great job to the American Legion for promoting these really great values in our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Other members of the council? Councilman Nowakowski.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I just want to invite everyone out to Coffee with the Cops for the Maryville Estrella Precinct on Wednesday, March 4th at 9:30. It's going to be at the Adam Diaz Senior Center, which is at 41st Avenue and right off of Thomas. Also, we're going to be having a pedestrian safety event on South Central Corridor hosted by US DOT at the Rio Salado Autobahn Center on Wednesday. That's this Wednesday at 1 p.m. So come on down, learn about pedestrian safety and all the great things we can do on South Central. Also, if you're out in the Levine area, we're going to finally get our hospital out there. So we have a grand opening of the Arizona General Hospital. That's going to happen on Thursday. So we invite everybody to come on out, and it's going to be a great celebration, something that people have been waiting for years. And I just want to really thank all those individuals that worked really hard to make this possible. And I know Councilmember Gallegos is going to be out there with me, so we're going to welcome this great hospital out to the Levine area. Also, we're going to have our second annual Heart and Soul Wellness Fitness at the Civic Space right downtown, right off of Van Buren and Central Avenue. So we invite everyone to come down for that. And on Sunday, March 8th, this Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., right on Grand Avenue. It's the Grand Avenue Merchants Association is putting on the tour of Del Tour de Gran. So it's going to be a big celebration showing off all the local businesses that we have down Grand Avenue, all the way from 7th Avenue to about 15th Avenue. We have all kinds of galleries and art displays out there. And if you haven't been down Grand Avenue lately, you need to go out there and just look at how they've created and just have this master plan for Grand Avenue. And there are going to be street vendors out there. There's going to be food trucks. There's going to be artists. There's going to be all kinds of vendors. So come on out. It's a family event. So we invite you to come out to District 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilwoman Gallego.
Thank you. This week we started off with a bang, and Mobile Mini relocated its global headquarters to District 8 along the Van Buren corridor in the Discovery Triangle. They said one of the two primary reasons they chose to move to District 8 was the light rail, so seems very relevant to today's meeting topic. They really felt like it would help them get the workforce they needed in and out efficiently, and we were very pleased to welcome them. They are the largest provider of mobile storage and growing quickly. They did an international acquisition on Monday, the same day they did their ribbon cutting. So that's the kind of growth we like to see since Phoenix is hot. And District 7 is particularly hot. We are looking forward to joining Councilman Nowakowski for the hospital grand opening this week, which will be such a great service to many of the residents of District 7 and 8, and then also the groundbreaking for the Union in downtown, so a big week. At the end of the month, another groundbreaking for Cesar Chavez Dog Park, and if you want to join us, it's Saturday, March 28th at 10 a.m., and if you really are excited about the dog park, you can help plan it. That committee is meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. at Chavez Library. We also are looking forward to the Support Sky Harbor Coalition Neighborhood Cleanup and Green Up, and that'll be on Saturday, March 7th at Garfield Elementary, bright and early at 7 a.m. And a couple other events coming up. We will have our Levine office hours on Sunday, March 15th at the Chavez Library, and you can contact our office if you want to make an appointment, and we can sit down and talk more in depth about some of the things going on in the community. We will also welcome our new police chief to a South Mountain Community Conversation on March 19th at South Mountain Community College. And if you're not already sick of meeting with our office, on March 25th in the morning, we will have our coffee with the councilwoman at Jerry's Restaurant at 6 p.m. and then the grand finale in my long list of meetings is the airport noise meetings will be March 26th at Cesar Chavez High School for the southwest portion of the city from 6 to 8 p.m. So lots of opportunities for good conversation.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Now, were you saying District 7 is hotter than District 8? Was that? As hot, equally hot. All right, good. Councilman Pastor.
The hottest district is really District 4. That's where it's all happening.
That's true. I'm going to go to the salsa challenge in District 4, so that is pretty hot.
There you go. There
They're
you go.
saying that the council chambers is in District 7. I believe District 7's hot.
Okay, all right.
All right, obviously this is not on the agenda, so let's get back to business. Go ahead.
As I mentioned last week, the 28th Annual Coronado Home Tour and Classic Car Show was this past Sunday, and the weather stayed with us. We were happy that it didn't rain. Also, Reading Across America, I have gone to two schools, Butler School and also the Prep Academy, and I will be reading tomorrow at Marie Bartlett, her elementary school. So looking forward to reading with young kids. As mentioned last week, this weekend, the Melrose 7th Avenue Street Fair is Saturday from 11 to 7, which we will also have our bike rodeo and helmet giveaway. So please, families, come and join us and get your helmet. On the western side, Golden Gate is holding a family health fair this Saturday, also March 7th, from 9 to 1 p.m. And they will be having basic health checks for kids, immunization, as well as hypertension screening and glucose testing for adults. The 27th Annual Art Detour is also happening this weekend. Lots of things happening in District 4. This weekend, March 7th, there are many events and exhibits that are happening, and you can get more information on artlinkphoenix.com. Also, Sherry Lynn will be having a home tour March 22nd on a Sunday. Sunday Office Central, which is hosted by Midtown Museum District, is Sunday, March 15th. And of course, the Aviation has released the dates of the community meetings that are follow-up to the series of which we held in January. The dates and locations can be found on skyharbor.com/flightpath website, as well as information relating to the city and the FAA issue. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Valenzuela.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not going to get District 5 in this whole who's hotter business. I will tell you that District 5 is absolutely the coolest district in the city, though. So I want to commend the Cahoots Foundation, Phoenix Union High School District for continuing this entrepreneurial activity with all of our students. There was another Code Day exercise that I was invited to. Again, this was put on by Phoenix Union High School District and Cahoots and GoDaddy. I believe you were there, Councilwoman Pastor. But several of us were there just to see all of these students continue to work out this activity that does promote entrepreneurial activity, and it was just a lot of fun. That said, I want to just mention one of the things that is happening in District 5 with GCU. Grand Canyon University has the Colangelo School of Business, and they actually, I think you all know by now that we're trying to do as much as we possibly can to promote entrepreneurial activity, which will help our economy, and we are on our way. I do believe by supporting our entrepreneurs and that space, incubators, co-working spaces, accelerators, of course, our higher education institutions, our high school students, we will benefit by adding 5,000 enterprises in the next 5 years, 5K, 5Y, and I do believe that we can do that. Of course, efforts are led by an amazing city staff, Paul Blue and Chris Mackey and several others. But GCU has this program. If one of their students has this idea and they're ready to take off with it, and of course, GCU makes the decision, sort of like an angel funder. They will help with the funding if, obviously it needs to be a good idea that they think will fly, but if they start their business in the neighborhood there in West Phoenix, and if they hire people from the neighborhood. And I just think that that's worth mentioning. I promote, different accelerators and so on, and I just thought that would be an important thing to mention, and I'm just really, I'm proud and I'm honored that is happening right there in West Phoenix. Read Across America, we are also doing that throughout District 5. We began last Friday at Heather Bray. This morning, we were reading Across America at Shealy Farms Elementary, and we had Tim Valencia there, who is our Youth and Education Director. We actually read to students at 2 different schools. The book we read, the book I chose, is a book called Healthy Kids. It promotes diversity and inclusion, and it also promotes health. And through a grant that Tim Valencia, a Read On Phoenix grant that we were successful in getting, that the city was successful in getting, every one of those children was given that particular book. So about 200 books were given. I just thought that, again, just getting creative, giving these kids an opportunity to get a free book on something as important as diversity and of course health. So I want to thank Tim Valencia and his team for doing that. We have a neighborhood event, a couple of neighborhood events this Saturday, March 7th. The District 5 team will be participating in the Tomahawk Resource Fair and a community cleanup. And this cleanup is going to be spearheaded by the Estrella Supermoms, which is a group of ladies who, for the last couple of years, they've been new to the Block Watch scene, and they're just amazing moms. They are absolutely super moms. That's what they are. They're not, I guess they're more than amazing. They are super moms. So they're going to be spearheading this particular activity, and we are also very lucky to have some of the most active and servant neighborhood leaders in the entire city of Phoenix, not only at this event, but several throughout District 5. So we're looking forward to getting around and having a good time there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other final comments? I'll just add one short one. That is, I too had the opportunity to participate in Read Across America, celebrating the birthday of Dr. Seuss, 111 years old. This year I was in Bethune School, and also participating was our friend Kim Covington. I mention that because Kim Covington, our friend from the longtime Channel 12 news reporter, the good news is that she'll be continuing to be a leader in this community, active as a consultant on education and community issues. The bad news is she has retired from Channel 12. One of the best local reporters who covered education issues, both good and bad, but she also covered a lot of good news that's going on in education in our community. I really appreciate all she has done for this city, and to really keep the focus in on education, because we all know that that's the key to our future, is all we can do to support our schools. So I really appreciate Kim Covington, her leadership, and it's sad that she's retired, but it's good news that she's going to continue being an active leader in our community. Kim, Godspeed. Councilman, you have something else?
I'm sorry, Mayor, there's just one more thing that I should have mentioned. That was my request is that you would lead us in a moment of silence for Phoenix firefighter Matthew Hyatt, whose memorial services were today. And it was a beautiful service. Great stories. Matthew's fire crews went up and shared some stories, and family members shared stories. And this young man led a full life of love, and I think it'd be important for us to acknowledge the Matthew and the Hyatt family with the moment of silence. But my request is that you would lead us, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. So let's do so to honor firefighter Matthew Hyatt. Okay, thank you for doing that, and it was a very beautiful memorial service today. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. Vice Mayor, do we have a consent agenda?
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Do we have an executive session?
There is. Mayor, in accordance with the properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 38-43(1)(a), meet an executive session on Wednesday, March 18th, 2015 at 1:30 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington Street, Phoenix, Arizona. And on Tuesday, March 24th, 2015 at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington Street, Phoenix, Arizona.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Mr. City Manager, do we have any reports, awards, or budget updates?
Mayor, we do not. We're ready to proceed.
The one and only item on today's agenda is the Citizens Committee on the Future of Phoenix Transportation recommendation. So the staff members and the community members who are going to be presenting on this item, please come forward. We should say that, I think it's probably going to be mentioned, that the chair of our committee was Mary Peters, the former Secretary of Transportation under President Bush. She could not be here today, but she led the way to get to this point. The committee was co-chaired by our former colleague on the City Council, Maria Beyer, and Marty Schultz, who I think will be one of the first speakers. But Rick, I'll let you kick it off.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the Council. We're here today to talk about the recommendations of the Citizens Committee on the Future of Phoenix Transportation. The City Council Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee heard this presentation a few weeks ago and made a recommendation which is in your packet and will outline today with just a few modifications to what the committee had recommended. I'd just like to introduce everybody here at the table, and then we're going to turn it over to our committee members to the presentation on this process, which was just an incredible amount of involvement of the residents of Phoenix in giving us input on this. So with me at the table is Maria Hyatt, our public transit director. Next to her is Andrew Federhar, who is a member of the committee, but he played a key role because he chaired a streets subcommittee that was very active and involved in this effort. There was a little more drilling down on streets that we needed to do as part of the process. You already introduced Marty Schultz, but I'll introduce him again. He was an important vice chair of this effort, has a long history of transportation involvement in this valley and in this state. Next to Marty is Ray Dovalina, our street transportation director, and Albert Santana, who is our light rail coordinator. So all of the staff are here really mostly for questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schultz, and I guess, Maria, you're going to run the PowerPoint.
Excellent. Mayor, members of the City Council, we're pleased to be here. In fact, before we begin, I'd like to describe who we are by asking all the members of this commission who are here to stand up and be recognized. We're going to go through the names and the diversity of the committee and the talent in a little bit through this presentation, but I thought that it would be helpful to see them. And I think that they would all agree, and I'm talking to Mary and to Maria prior to this meeting, to thank you for the opportunity to spend all these hours and to do all this work, because actually I think everybody on the committee felt it was work worth doing, and hopefully you will acknowledge that as you see this presentation. So without further ado, we'll kick off the presentation. First of all, I'd like to describe pre-T2000 levels. And having said that, let's just make sure everybody's oriented to the fact that in 2000 there was a similar major effort. Actually, before that, it was a continuation of a lot of good transportation planning. But the mayor and council at that time, the voters in this community supported transportation investment. However, before T2000, there was a lot of need, and as you can see, we didn't have late night service, we didn't have Sunday or holiday service, we didn't have circulators, and if that's a new term to some of you, we'll describe that in just a moment. We didn't have light rail, we didn't have accessibility, we didn't have bus rapid. And if we go through this process and there's need for a description of these terms, we don't talk in acronyms, but the bottom line is we didn't have these services in the city of Phoenix, and I might say these services were not available in the valley. The voters at that time were faced with the proposition of voting for a 0.4 of 1 cent. It's an interesting way to describe that. But the bottom line is it's less than a penny, it's less than a half a penny, but it does get applied to all of the retail and appropriate services in the city of Phoenix only. It is an investment for the 20-year period, and it started in 2000, therefore it expires in 2020, and we'll describe why we're here in advance. The Transit 2000 program included 1% of the total projects for streets, because streets are typically handled in other manners that we can describe. So let's talk about what was accomplished, bringing everybody up to date. Since 2001, ridership on transits increased 42%, and light rail has almost met the 20-year ridership projections. Shall I say that again? Light rail has already met the 20-year ridership projections, and we're only in 2015. 20 miles of light rail was constructed. 14 million people rode the light rail in 2014. For $7 billion in economic development activity was generated. And we're prepared to go into that in detail, and also think the way to describe that, and I think that Councilwoman Gallego described it, there are individual investors, people who are willing to put up the money in the city of Phoenix for various projects, multifamily, major construction, you name it, economic activity of all kinds and descriptions. And they make their decision based on a lot of factors, but the anticipation of light rail in the early 2000s and now the anticipation of the expansion of light rail is an economic generator that can be defined, and I hope to demonstrate that to you as we go through this process. $7 billion in economic development throughout the light rail development. Local bus service has extended hours on weekdays, weekends, and holidays. Think about it from a real people standpoint. People who use the bus, use Bus Rapid. Think about it because I do. I've lived here since 1953, and I've seen the progress. Actually, I didn't live too far from where the mayor started up there in what, Cactus area? West Phoenix, I believe. Bus Rapid had almost 1 million boarders in 2014. That is really significant. Bus Rapid is what gets people to work and gets people to where they need to be, but in the most efficient manner. 5 circulators are running. The average daily ridership is 160,000 for bus and rail. Dial-a-ride service for is available 7 days a week. There's more than 300 bus pull-out bays, thank goodness. For those who drive cars, they say thank you for those who installed the bus pull-out bays. 150 miles of bike lanes, which is not a trivial matter in our community because it is part of the culture of this community. 330 left-turn arrows at intersections have all been installed since the 2001 timeframe. Passenger security and facility maintenance has been upgraded, and in what I thought was a pretty visionary move, the Citizens Transportation Commission was established to ensure accountability and oversight of the tax. On the next slide, you can see that even though much was achieved, the long-term objectives of the Transit 2000 program were hampered by significant declines in revenue during 2 recessions. This is one of the challenges of making long-term predictions. It happens. We have points in our economic activity of surges, and then those who make these economic estimates are considered wise people, and we put those swamis on top of pedestals and say, way to go. And then there are, in normal economic conditions, recessions. We've had, in the time that this has been part of Phoenix's activity, the Great Recession, which some economists describe as significant or maybe a touch less significant than the Great Depression. It was bad. To date, the program has generated approximately $1 billion less in revenue than anticipated. At the same time, funding for street projects and maintenance has also declined as long-standing sources of support for roadway construction and infrastructure, such as the Arizona Highway User Fund, also saw reductions. Our friends in Congress are not dropping big loads of money on us anytime soon, and they haven't been. The committee is described here. You saw many of the committee members here. You heard about Mary and Maria being out of town. But this 34-member group provided a comprehensive, and I would like to emphasize that, comprehensive review of public transit and street transportation needs citywide, and to gather resident input obtained through a variety of public engagements and methods. We had 11 meetings of the committee, and we analyzed transportation landscape of each area of the city. We considered public transit and transportation infrastructure, land use and census data, employment and demographic trends, and how to connect major destinations. And then we had a whole boat full of public input, which we'll describe because the public input was significant. We had 100 meetings that were meetings in each of your city council districts, meetings that we conducted. We had an engagement of 3,700 residents. I want to give credit to Arizona State University, my alma mater, because we had class participation, and they actually developed ways that we could target and get feedback on the outreach program. They provided assistance with our committee workshop, which was instructive as we worked with a real-time model to construct the recommendations that you're going to hear about today. Common themes were heard from the public. One, high-capacity transit was necessary. That's changes and improvements to new rail, bus rapid, and downtown circulation, high-capacity transit. Bus service, local bus routes and hours and frequency, another major message. Complete streets. The built infrastructure needs to include shade, ADA accessibility, bike lanes, better walkability, and pavement improvements. You can go through all the details, and pavement improvements are a significant issue to the public. They're a significant issue to all of you, and in my case, they're a significant issue to me, especially in my neighborhood, Councilman Valenzuela. But that's the way everybody feels about it, and I don't blame them. And we've done the best job we can do in funding these kinds of infrastructure recommendations. But beyond that, in order for the most efficient use of the monies that are being invested, there's technology. And I'm going to summarize it, and there's a lot of detail that goes into this. Wi-Fi, electronic fare media, digital signage, fuel technology, paratransit trip planning online, and then we also explored funding major options. Okay, now, overview of what the comprehensive transportation plan is. And we use the word comprehensive because it is. Sometimes you hear about multimodal, which means that there are many modes. Well, why not just stick with major streets? Some people would ask. In fact, some people would ask, why not just have freeways and major streets and leave it at that? And the reason is that I'll use the term great, but great underlies the following, that is, we're a big city. We're talking about Phoenix. Phoenix alone is over 1.5 million people, but the densities in some of our area go towards 10,000 people per square mile. No kidding. For those of us that lived here since the 50s, 10,000 people per square mile. And if you want to know density increase, just wait around the next 20 years, because millennials and millennial nets, those are the real kids, my grandkids, that are making these decisions. You know what they're doing? They're making decisions to drive till they qualify, a few, but many of them are making decisions to move to the central city. So 18 miles of council-approved light rail is in this comprehensive plan, 24 miles of high-capacity transit. It could be bus, rail, bus rapid, streetcar, and 75 miles of bus rapid transit. Talk a little bit about the bus service. I mentioned this term bus rapid, which you're familiar with. The recommendations extend the bus rapid routes. There are new extended bus routes. There's downtown circulation. I am sure, as I looked around this audience today, there are people who are instrumental in building this downtown from the private sector who know how important transportation and circulation is. This downtown circulation is going to actually study and then ultimately implement a transit mode which could potentially include a circulator or a streetcar. Longer weekday and weekend hours to match current light rail, and the majority of bus routes are going to run 15 minutes or less during peak hours, making transit more convenient. Let's talk about streets, and let's ask, we had an interesting situation. We had a lot of expertise on our transportation commission, but we also, besides Mary Peters, former Secretary of Transportation, we actually had longtime transportation and civic activist in this particular area, former head of the Transportation Board at the state level. And I'd like to ask Andy Federhar if he would cover the street improvements, because we drilled down especially on street improvements.
Thank you, Marty. The map shows an overview of what we're talking about for street improvements in Phoenix. Right now, Phoenix has just over $7 billion in its 30-year street and stormwater infrastructure needs. Of that, with existing projected revenues from the state HERF fund, the Highway User Revenue Fund, there are still more than $5 billion in unmet, unfunded infrastructure needs. This transportation plan that we bring to you provides more than $2.4 billion dedicated to street improvements. It focuses primarily on existing street maintenance, major street projects, that is new roads, new bridges, and street modernization, mobility improvements, things like sidewalks and bike lanes, and technology enhancement. This map depicts the City of Phoenix arterial network. There are currently about 740 miles of major streets shown in blue. The funding for streets will double existing funding levels for overlays and new pavements. What does that mean? Well, right now, $22 billion in funding for 2016 and annual increases after that. It will achieve a 30-year maintenance cycle for our major streets, now more than 750 miles. And it will take the existing overlay funding that can be reallocated for the more than 4,000 miles of collector and local streets, the neighborhood streets that you and I and everyone who lives in Phoenix travels. We will be able to obtain a 50-year maintenance cycle on those streets. There are some additional highlights that we're adding to this plan as well. 1,150 new bicycle lane miles, 1,150. More than 170 miles of new sidewalks, 2,000 new street lights for our streets and neighborhoods, and $280 million dedicated for major projects. This money will be spent across the city of Phoenix where needs are established, ranging from 60 to 100 or 125 million, depending on the particular district where the projects have been identified.
Excellent. The plan also includes funding technology and infrastructure improvements, and we'll give you an example of some. All bus stops will be shaded. New facilities like transit centers and park and ride lots, which really facilitate the system. Customer service technology upgrades such as reloadable cards, Wi-Fi, real-time trip planning. The ADA and accessibility upgrades are not only federal requirements and city code requirements, they're the right thing to do, and they're incorporated into this plan. There are significant security improvements which are always important. However, the way the system is designed, people are able to get on and off, and the security improvements have actually proved to be helpful in terms of the efficiency of the service. And improving our community's sustainability by increasing the use of compressed natural gas, fuel, and installing solar. We also identified policy issues, and while we only have time to highlight them, each one is, a meeting in itself. But first of all, in order to maintain today's transit and street networks, we need to, which will clearly far exceed your revenues that will be presented today, and it's just one of those things. The question is, how can we make sure that it is used most efficiently? So financing, researching and identifying and advocating for multiple financing methods is part of our suggested examination. These financing methods include public-private partnerships, value-added, value capture, tax increment financing, or variations allowed by the state of Arizona, toll roads and improvement districts. Each one of those is subject in itself. However, each one of those is helpful in holding the key to modern financing because there is pent-up capital available for the city of Phoenix in a variety of sources around the world, not just in traditional or standard methods. Funding, other than just sales tax, but including sales tax, gas tax, indexing vehicle license tax, and the property tax, all should be at least considered. The committee members also delved into staff assumptions on sales tax growth rates. The recommended comprehensive transportation plan provides $2.4 billion in new funding for street transportation need, but leaves $3.5 billion of unfunded needs over 30 years. But we believe those funding needs vary and are important, but can be secured potentially from other areas. Competition, emphasizing that competition for services and maintenance is desired to best obtain value with limited resources. We also looked and suggest you drill down further in terms of the economic development impacts of transportation in the city of Phoenix. I can assure you that not only experts in economic development and in development, but many others, and I think the public recognizes this innately, a successful, an effective and efficient transportation plan makes a difference in the economic fortunes of a community. In fact, Andy?
You only need to look at what happened with the half-cent sales tax starting in 1985 and then with the transit tax in 2000 to see how the economic growth factor of transportation applies. The extension of the superstition out into East Mesa, the creation of the 101 and 51 loop into Northeast Phoenix and Scottsdale, and all the economic development that's happened there and in Glendale and the West Valley, all because of the availability of transportation has allowed enormous economic development to occur in the valley.
Regional connectivity is a big deal here, and so the City of Phoenix took the initiative with T2000. The City of Phoenix, we're going to recommend take another initiative in this modernization and upgrading of the system. Interestingly enough, you see what that kind of activity spawns in regional cooperation, and then in terms of other cities taking initiative on their own, finding creative approaches in the transit area and in the freeway area. There's a great examples of on the west side, for example, of how they have improved and frankly expedited freeway development. Accessibility to the transportation network is critical, and adding light rail stations at key locations such as 48th Street, safe, accessible sidewalks and bike paths, and improved dial-a-ride, especially relating to regional connectivity, is important. And finally, you know, I've used the word, and Andy's used the word technology, but we can't overstate how important modern technology can be to the creation of an efficient system. Now to funding. When you hear about a quarter of a penny or 4/10 of a penny, and then you hear about our recommendations and Councilwoman Williams' committee's recommendations for modifying our recommendation, it amounts to another 0.33 of 1 cent. And people may get the idea that, you know, that's what it's all about. But really what it's all about is a menu that is a real menu, a source of funds from a variety of places. And I think this chart reflects the estimate of all the funding sources. And there's no question about it. When you're talking about a big city and you're talking about 34 years, you're talking about a significant number. This tax increase that we're recommending, by the way, Mr. Mayor and members of council, is only a small part of it. It's not a $33 billion tax increase. In fact, the actual continued transit is $9.9 billion. The increased sales tax for transportation would be $8.2 billion. Transit fares raise an approximately $5.1 billion. And by the way, that's 40% of the cost on light rail, and we've got a slide to demonstrate that if you want to get drilled down into the figures. And we estimate that the tax will leverage another $9.7 billion from federal, regional, and bond funds.
And this is an important point. This tax not only generates money directly, but it allows the city to receive substantial funds, almost $10 billion from other sources.
So we talked about economic development, and you know, I was tempted to bring all of the newspapers and all of the articles, but we'll just summarize a few, and I appreciate Councilwoman Gallegos' kickoff of this, and it wasn't scripted. She was just given her report. And this committee didn't go out and say to the State Farm executives, help us make our case. They just simply were quoted in the newspapers saying that that was a major issue that caused them to, the transit in Tempe specifically, was a major issue that caused them to invest $600 million in that hub for their office location. So neighborhood shuttles, buses, light rail, they play a major role in State Farm's decision. $7 billion in economic development along the existing light rail line has been documented, and there's plenty of developers and investors to testify to that. And every dollar communities invest in public transportation generates approximately $4 in economic returns. And for every $1 billion invested in public transportation, more than 36,000 jobs are supported, according to sources that we'll be glad to discuss in more detail with you. So San Francisco and Seattle and Austin, they're grabbing these companies, and businesses are locating within walking distance of light rail stations. No kidding, that's the way it works. Commercial real estate brokers in Arizona are touting proximities to metro stations. I would be tempted to, bring people that I know, your friends and my friends who are in this business around here, and they'll just tell you how they're getting these deals and how they're losing deals to the extent that we aren't as aggressive as we need to be in the development of transportation plan. So now it gets down to what every person should ask. In fact, I believe in the policy of enlightened self-interest. You politicians say it differently, but I believe from a business standpoint, we call it enlightened self-interest. Okay, what's it going to do? There you can see it. It offers choices. The breathing easier is no kidding. You start using alternative fuels, you start taking cars off the road, and that does have a marked impact on the airshed in this area. Improves safety, traffic relief. Being here since 1953 when we were about 150,000, could I say traffic relief again and again? Better economy, connectivity, saving money, more jobs, and passenger experience. There's a lot of data behind that. In the streets area, Andy, talk a little bit more about this, would you please?
Sure. Even though we were focused primarily on transit, the committee quickly recognized that long-term funding to build and sustain our nearly 5,000 miles of streets is at a crisis level at this point. There are over $7 billion in street and storm water infrastructure needs over the next 30 years, and we are unfunded to the amount of more than $5 billion because of shortfalls in state sources, federal sources, and other sources of funds. This plan will provide more than $2.4 billion, as I said before, dedicated to street improvements. It's primarily focused on existing street maintenance, major street projects, mobility improvements, and technology enhancement. The plan will directly benefit and indirectly benefit each and every street in Phoenix. It will have a citywide impact. So listed in the slide above are just some of the challenges that we're able to tackle with this existing funding, or with this additional funding. This is what you would have. You'll have nearly 5,000 miles of existing streets. Of that, 736 are major arterials. 612 miles are collector streets, and over 3,500 miles are neighborhood streets. All of these will be dealt with under this plan.
So a little touch of the negative, because we have been pretty positive, and I realize that in any important issue that the council considers, there's pluses and there's minuses. Well, if the existing T2000 were to go away, and by the way, to your credit, looking 5 years in advance actually is a pretty good view. Frankly, I'd like a lot of us to start looking at the freeway tax that goes away in 10 years from now, because we'd be well advised to look 5 years in advance. So if the sales tax were to go away, to expire, no action taken by this council or others, the current sales tax for bus and light rail operations, if it goes away, I would see $130 million annual budget deficit. And we verified it's not a shortfall, and it is a deficit beginning in 2020. I'm sure the manager wouldn't like to be able to incorporate that into his planning. This would require us to cut our bus and light rail service by 60%. We'd see a significant reduction in capital improvements because federal and regional funds would not be available to us without the ability to operate the new service. And services would be substantially lower than pre-transit 2000 levels. If the 4/10 of 1 penny remains, we'd still have a reduction in of 15 miles of council-approved light rail. You'd have a delay in light rail projects for the next 3 to 5 years. You'd have existing bus service being maintained, but there would be no funding for expansion, increases in frequency, or extended bus hours. It does not meet our Community Transit 2000 goals, and there would be no improvements to streets. The committee felt this option was inadequate, but we did take a look at it. So now, replacement of the transportation tax, or T2000, that's recommended, and an increase of 0.33%. We believe that should be commenced, and I think when I say we, this is actually the recommendations that are now officially coming to you from the Subcommittee on Infrastructure and Transportation. This would commence in 2016, the first day, and it would sunset in December 31st, 2050. We really do believe that you should form a combined transit and streets committee. You've got a very talented city staff. There's no doubt about that from the transportation improvement standpoint, infrastructure, streets, transit, finance, construction strategies. You've got the package, but we still believe that citizens are so interested that they should participate in the oversight along with the ultimate responsibility, Mr. Mayor and Council, that is yours. And upon passage of this tax, there is a provision that the Council passed with regard to additional police officers. So what are we talking about here? Talking about $5 a month, talking about 1 cup of coffee from the shop in the lobby at City Hall. Where else would anybody go? The Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee recommendations would result in a sales tax increase of 1/3 of a penny, or 0.33, that's tenths, for every $100 of purchase. The $5 a month fund funds needed street improvements, which comprises nearly 1/3 of the additional tax, transforms public transit in our city, and fosters significant economic development. With the subcommittee's recommendations, this $5 also allows the city to relocate funding to create the police officer position. And the last one, Maria, I put this up on the screen because any modern committee activity would include social media. So we reached out to social media and got thousands of responses from citizens all over who talk transportation, and frankly they had a lot of good recommendations which we could further discuss, but we accepted some. We thought others were not timely, and the recommendation coming to you today for your consideration is to give the voters a chance to opine on this in the earliest possible time, and we'd be glad to answer any questions or hear any comments.
First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Schultz, for your leadership as Vice Chair of the committee. Mr. Fedorhar, excellent presentation here today. So I'll first turn to the Council and see if they have any questions for the leadership of the Citizens Committee, obviously noting that the Chair, Mary Peters, who's busy around the country working on transportation projects, not able to be here today. And then afterwards, I have many cards, so as soon as we have a few questions from members of the Council, we'll go to the members of the public who wish to testify on the proposal, and then we'll seek a motion from the Council. Vice Mayor, do you have some questions?
I did. So the total tax increase, as I understand it, is $8.2 billion.
Yes, sir.
Right. On page, and I'm sorry you don't have this numbered, this page here.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it. So is that the breakdown for the tax increase or the plan as a whole?
Actually, I'm not sure, because what we showed you, Maria, let's go back there. This is the allocation of?
The same one I have here.
This is the same one. Oh, okay. So, excuse me, Councilman.
So is that the breakdown? Is that the $8.2 billion, then a quarter of it is light rail? Or is it the entire package, a quarter of it is light rail?
Maybe Ms. Hyatt could answer that question, please.
Mayor Stanton, Vice Mayor Waring, this is based on the increase, not the current 4/10. This would be the additional sales tax.
So it's a couple billion extra for light rail out of the $8.2 billion, quarter of it. Okay. What percentage of the population is moved every day by light rail?
Roughly 10% of our total ridership on transit is on
I'm
light
asking
rail.
about cars, too. So people are
28,000. Roughly 28,000 people on
But
a
what
regular
percentage
weekday.
of people who are commuting or going about their business? I mean, I've heard 2%. Is that an accurate guess?
Mr. Young?
I don't think, Mayor, Councilman Waring, we have the data you're talking about, but it's possible we could. I don't know what the number of trips is in the valley. I'm not sure if Mr. Banta, whether you have any that kind of data from Metro. We can get something like that.
I mean, it wouldn't be 25%, or even close to that, I wouldn't think.
Certainly not. But also, not everybody gets in a car and goes somewhere every day. There's a certain number of trips that happen every day. So.
Right, but I mean, I think you understand what I'm asking. This is disproportionately weighted towards light rail. I have an issue with that, a big issue, so I guess you're probably not going to know. Let me ask you this. How much is a trip for a light rail rider versus a trip for a bus rider? And I'm talking about how much does it cost a taxpayer? How expensive is it per person to ride one of our transit options? Take the cars out of it.
So, Vice Mayor Waring, the cost per passenger mile for operations is 32 cents for light rail. And when you add in the capital, it's 72 cents. In comparison to the bus is actually more. It's 97 cents cost per passenger mile. And with the capital, it's $1.10. So we carry more passengers on one train than we do on a bus, which is why the cost per passenger is less on a train.
All right. I was just curious. There was a reference to 117 new miles. And I missed, what is it? Because there was a lot of talk about mileage and so forth. What was the 117 miles?
117.
At some point, I heard the figure 117 miles of something. And somehow, I think it was maybe Andy was.
I think it was Andy.
Well, I think we're talking about a number of things. We're talking about expansions of streets. We're talking about, I thought, 17 miles of light rail expansion to various areas. So I'm not sure exactly.
Or maybe I misheard it. I was a little confused because there were several different references to miles.
The only figure I know about, Mayor, Councilman Waring, that's close to that is we talked about 170 new miles of new sidewalks as part of the package.
All right, I was curious. I just wrote that down because I was curious.
Vice Mayor Waring, this slide, and what we're calculating in is we're calculating in all of the high-capacity transit, which could include light rail, it could be streetcar, it could be bus rapid transit. So when you cluster in all of those that are considered in this comprehensive transportation plan, it is equivalent to 117 new miles, although the technology would have to be determined in many of those determinations, many of those miles.
So how much is a light rail mile? How much does it cost to build one?
It costs 87.4. Let me get it. I've got it. Handy dandy cheat, all in. So that includes all of your costs based on today's dollars. So that's your right of way.
What was the figure again?
87.4 million.
And Mr. Vice Mayor, we're talking about 18 miles, not 17 miles, of council already approved light rail. It's part of the Transit 2000 program. There'll be 24 miles of high-capacity transit that could be rail, could be bus rapid transit, or a streetcar circulator in downtown, and then 75 miles of bus rapid transit.
I'm sorry, how many miles of transit are we adding above and beyond what we already have at $87,400,000 a pop?
Vice Mayor Waring, what we have already approved by council that has been through with the locally preferred alternative with light rail as the designated mode, we have 18 miles.
It's a big city. That doesn't seem like that many miles at $87,400,000 a pop. Can I ask this? So if we have to tear up utilities and so forth to build light rail, who pays for that?
I'm sorry.
Just to clarify on the answer to the question that you asked, those dark blue lines that cross the northern part and the extension on Camelback Road, the way the committee constructed this, while we haven't determined the mode yet, those three lines, which are 24 additional miles, are funded in the plan at the light rail level. Now, it may be that those end up being bus rapid transit or something else, but in the plan, those dark blue miles are funded at the rail levels. It's actually 24 plus the 18. I just wanted to make that clarification. The other miles, the other 75 miles, are funded at the bus rapid transit level. It may be as we go through the process, the mayor and council decide, no, rail is not the right answer.
Change.
Right. So now Maria and I were discussing that and didn't hear your other question.
Who pays for relocating utilities and so forth? If you tear up a road, tear up the utilities.
So that's a complicated answer, Mr. Vice Mayor, as a lawyer who sometimes represents utilities when that happens. It depends on who's there first. It depends on under what right they're there, whether they have a prior right, whether they're there from a franchise, whether they had other rights that have put them in the roadway. So there's no flat answer that deals with any particular utility company. Predominantly, the utility company pays for it.
I mean, I'm assuming those costs...
Mr. Vice Mayor, as a former utility executive for only 32 years with Arizona Public Service Company, I might suggest to you that there's another element of that answer. While it is true that, as Andy said, there are costs depending on what your right is, the utilities in this town, and I know it's a case with Arizona Public Service Company, have worked very closely over the years, not just this year, but over the years, with the city of Phoenix and with other cities to make a determination about what the future construction activities might be for light rail, and have avoided placing utilities in those rights-of-way so that whatever the actual number is, depending on what councils decide in the future about construction of light rail, it's substantially less than it would be, because utilities have worked with the cities and worked with the transportation planners to actually avoid utility relocation issues where it's possible, avoid those conflicts.
But it just seems like ultimately the ratepayer will wind up paying that. I mean, that could be a pricey item that's not being included in some of our financial modeling.
Mayor and Vice Mayor Waring, I think I need to add a little more explanation to this. For light rail, for our light rail projects that we have done, our local money was leveraged with Proposition 400 money, which is regional money. That regional money, in the description that went to the voters, it said that that money, if it involves light rail construction, will pay for all utility relocations associated with the project. So when we did our light rail projects, the regional money was used to pay for the utility relocations. In this model, in the pie chart that Marty showed you earlier, we anticipate regional money with the same kinds of requirements on it, so the utilities would not have to pay, even those non-prior rights utilities would not have to pay for their relocation. Should that regional money not be available, if the council wishes to stipulate that any project that we do take care of those costs, we could include it. It is budgeted and included in all of the budgets for the potential light rail corridors.
Well, I guess I was concerned earlier. Something was said about $5 million or $5 billion, excuse me, didn't materialize that we expected to materialize in this thing's predecessor. So, how much of that was other governmental entities and not just economic downturn? We were counting on money from other places, and it didn't happen. Is that the case, or
Mr. Vice Mayor, that was my comment, and that shortfall related to the T2000 tax, and that was $1 billion below the original estimates, and that was because of the reception. That's the money that didn't materialize.
There's also two concepts here. There's a shortfall in funding from the Transit 2000 tax. There's also unmet needs that were in excess of $5 billion. That's the figure you heard, that are unmet needs from any funding source for street transportation.
How much does it cost us to build a mile of road?
A mile of what?
Depends on the nature of the road. Not all roads are the same. If you're building a highway, a freeway, is it at grade? Is it above grade? What sort of drainage do you need on it? One of the issues we faced at ADOT for all those years that we built the freeway system was exactly that. What's the quality of road that you have to build, and what are your obstacles? So there's no easy answer to tell you about that, Mr. Vice Mayor.
And Mayor, Vice Mayor, I would suggest that Ray Dovalina has some specific numbers on what, what is freeway, what is a regular road, et cetera.
Mr. Dovalina, try to get as much as possible, apples to apples comparison, please.
Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor, typically, and just kind of adding into what Mr. Federer has stated, roughly an arterial street runs between $6 million to roughly about $12 million, depending on right-of-way, depending on development, depending on a lot of factors. So roughly between $6 to $12 million, that's roughly the per mile, and with a lot of factors. With regards to freeways, we've been looking at and monitoring what ADOT is doing, is running about a little bit over $80 million to $90 million a mile. That's, again, a lot of factors: construction, right-of-way, a lot of factors that they have to consider as well, if it's over, under, at grade. So those sort of the comparisons that you're looking at.
So would it be a fair...
Mr. Schultz, you want to add something, please?
Yes, I do. I love these guys, and I love the discussion about the detail. But with all due respect, I don't think that, this is my view, I don't think that actually transportation is driving the economic development of the city. Economic development is in large measure responding to transportation. Therefore, while these economic discussions about the cost of light rail and the cost of a freeway and the cost of a major street are very, very important, and I totally agree with you, Mr. Vice Mayor, we should have those discussions. What's really going on here is that as we build a city that is becoming more dense by virtue of the fact that people are making choices, freeways help, but they don't do the job. Our major streets are great because they're fairly wide, but they don't do the total job. It also requires another mode, and in this case you're getting recommendations on two modes: expansion of light rail and also a more aggressive bus system. Because for a city that is shaped like ours, whose population increases are dramatic, and I'd be glad to go into the detail, plus the valley increases, multimodal or a variety of modes is necessary, and comparing and contrasting the cost of each mode is very important. But in the end, it's my opinion that we will be building, or at least we should be building, all these modes in order to drive the economy forward. I think that the Super Bowl, as one fairly recent example, is testimony to the fact that in order for a great city to put on a great event, you need a variety of transportation modes. Now, next year, we get the champ game, and the following year, we get the Final Four, and my guess is that there'll be a lot of action in downtown Phoenix, probably in downtown Scottsdale, downtown Glendale, all over the valley. And you know, one of the reasons that we get that is because we're capable of handling the traffic, but not just with freeways and not just with light rail. It is a multimodal activity. It's my opinion.
So Ray, would it be, so the district I represent, where you'd have a heck of a commute to get to the light rail to ride it anywhere. Not saying there aren't people in my district who do that, but you'd still have a long drive ahead of you on roads to get there. So one of the things that they're talking about is doing the light rail on or by the 51 to get up to Paradise Valley Mall, which is actually in Councilman Gates's district, but is right down the street from my house and a lot of my constituents, particularly if you're on the southern end of my district. So for the same price, is it a fair statement that for the same price as it'll cost to get the light rail up to Paradise Valley Mall, you could add lanes to the 51?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, good question. One of the challenges would be is that...
Can I ask what Marty thinks about my question? Just kidding, Marty.
I think it's a great question.
He likes it too.
It's a great question. I think one of the challenges that you will see is that these corridors that we have already in the urban core freeway system, they're pretty much to the maximum width of the freeway corridors. So adding something additional would have some implications to how right-of-way would have to be obtained, how neighborhoods would be impacted, how that system would have to work in conjunction with the current system, because we already have a freeway system through there. So what are the impacts for that existing system? I think it's balancing providing modes, as we've talked here, balancing the modes of choices for residents in different parts of the city to elect what that mode of transportation they're going to take. So I think just looking at, for example, the South Mountain Freeway, those are the numbers that I brought up, about a little bit less than $90 million. That's going to be the cost for construction and right-of-way in a somewhat suburban area. And so when you look at those numbers and you start looking at an urbanized, more urbanized area, those numbers can grow significantly. And so I wouldn't be using the same number for a suburban, more sparse areas as compared to a lane on the freeway, on I-17, or multiple lanes on those existing freeways, because there's probably, those numbers probably go exponential with regards to the impacts of the right-of-way and construction.
Frankly, I was surprised at how low the number was, and I now understand why. Expanding in an urbanized area that's densely populated means taking people's homes and businesses. It means disrupting long-established neighborhoods, and it means doing it to thousands and thousands of homes. And that cost, as opposed to land that is not yet developed or is sparsely developed, is exponentially more expensive.
Let me ask it this way then, since I didn't necessarily get an answer about the cost. I understand what you're saying. I'm not entirely sure how, if we're talking about the 51, just use that example and stay with it, how light rail doesn't take up as much space. If it's so condensed you can't put anything else there, I'm not sure where you're planning on putting the light rail, but I guess we'll take that out of it. But wouldn't lanes of freeway move a heck of a lot more people for that $90 million than the light rail would?
Do you want to speak?
Well, I can, Mayor and Vice Mayor, what I can tell you is that within a daily, average daily traffic, I mean, we can look between 150 to 250,000 vehicles a day on a 4 to 6 lane freeway. I mean, for example, I-10. That is a comparatively to a light rail corridor, that's significantly less than normally what a light rail would carry. And I would leave those numbers to Maria to explain on the light rail side.
So, Vice Mayor, for 2 lanes of train running back and forth, it's about 28 feet of right-of-way that's needed. When you add in the station, it goes up to 50 feet. But, for instance, if you're talking, let's say the SR 51, 28 additional feet of right-of-way would be needed. And when you're running the trains, if we're going to say at the peak, which is about 6 minutes, headways between the trains, we can carry as many people in that train as we would in a 6-lane freeway, just because of the capacity of the trains, and it takes a lot less right-of-way while you're traveling along with those people.
You're saying as many people, I don't think this is what you're saying, as many people are traveling by light rail in a day as there are people on the roads?
What I'm saying is that you can carry as many people in the train as you could on a 6-lane freeway.
But we have a lot of lanes of freeway, and you just, light rail, you only go where it goes, and it sounds like that's going to be about 35 miles.
But, Mr. Vice Mayor, that's why you need to...
And let's face it, we won't get to Paradise Valley Mall for 20 years. So isn't that the projection?
Mr. Vice Mayor, that's why you need an integrated, comprehensive system, so that people can take a rapid transit or a bus to a light rail station, get on the train at the light rail station, and don't have to drive and park and build parking lots. That's why this is a fully integrated system to address the very concern that you raise right now.
Any other questions? I think I do go to cards myself, but in terms of timing, I just want to quickly address that. If supported by the City Council, if supported by the people of the City of Phoenix, I think you're going to see a council that's proven a willingness to engage in some very creative thinking, particularly as it relates to public-private partnerships, to advance a lot of these a lot more quickly than if we just rely specifically on waiting till the fund was there. We've learned through other major transportation projects that public-private partnerships can advance these projects, get the building going and the jobs that go along with it a lot more quickly. And I know I will, and I believe a majority of this council will be very, very open-minded and aggressive in pursuing public-private partnerships. But first we have to see if the council supports this, and then the people of the city of Phoenix support it. Next, I'm going to go to cards because I think there's a lot of people here to testify, and then each member of the council will have plenty of time to ask questions of the professional staff. But I want to be as respectful as possible of the people that are here, and I know are very, very busy as well. I'll ask each of the speakers to keep it to up to 2 minutes. I know people are passionate about this issue. I know this next speaker can make a great point in less than 2 minutes. Former Councilman Claude Maddox.
No pressure, Mayor. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to serve on this committee. It was a re-education on how complex our transportation system is. And what you're going to hear is you're going to hear a lot of folks that like the idea, a lot of folks that don't like the idea. It's got to be a good plan because not everybody's happy. And from my perspective, I look at it that we've invested a lot that has brought us to today. We need to continue that investment. You don't let your house go after you buy it. You continue to invest in it, maintain it, improve it. And that's what we're talking about here. I'm looking at, and for those of us who agree that there is a sun corridor, and I was going to say tsunami, but we don't have tsunamis here, so a sun corridor, Haboob, on its way. In the next 30 to 50 years, our population is going to double. We need to prepare for that. We need to put in the infrastructure so that we can handle the traffic, we can handle the population, the density, and most importantly, the economic development. So, and as I said at the subcommittee meeting, all we're asking is let the voters have a chance to make the decision as to whether they support this or not. So I would ask you to support this and pass it on to the ballot. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman, for your continued service to the citizens of Phoenix. Next speaker will be Rich Stanley, representing a small university located in the central part of Arizona, and then followed by Phil Pangrazio. Mr. Stanley, representing Arizona State University.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of ASU. We are very supportive of the transit plan and particularly of the light rail.
Yep.
I'm at the wrong. Okay, sorry. We are very supportive of the transit plan that's being projected, and particularly of the light rail. There's a little bit of history behind this. The advent of the light rail was one of the major drivers of the decision for ASU to move its campus or move its programs into the downtown Phoenix campus, and that has been we gave us the confidence that we would be able to have the kinds of connectivity between campuses for our students so that they could take advantage of programs in all of the locations. We think the same can be true with the West Campus, with the expansion over time of the light rail structure out to that area. We've made investments in the West Campus in housing and in other facilities, and we want to continue to grow that campus, and this is one way to do it. A couple of numbers I'll give you. ASU students and staff right now buy 8,000 U passes each year. They did 976,000 of the 15 million trips on the light rail in FY13. And that demand will just continue to grow, and there is already evidence of demand going out into the west part of Phoenix. Students at the ASU West Campus take 75,000 shuttle rides in a semester down to the downtown campus and another 75,000 to the Tempe campus. All of those would then be connected by light rail and would provide the basis for a wider range of educational opportunities, fewer miles on buses on the road, and growth for the campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stanley, for your testimony representing Arizona State University. Phil Pangrazio, the CEO of ABLE, Arizona Bridge to Independent Living, followed by Mr. Abraham James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Phil Pangrazio, and I served on the committee that brought forth this recommendation. I'd also first like to, as has been said by others today, but I do want to compliment our chair, Mary Peters, of the committee, and our co-chairs, Marty Schultz and Maria Bayer. They provided a tremendous amount of leadership for this committee and a lot of knowledge and experience. I think they conducted an extraordinarily fair and impartial process with the committee. And one thing I will say about this committee, everybody on this committee loves this city of Phoenix. And even though there wasn't always agreement, but I will say the support for this recommendation from the committee, there was an overwhelming majority of this committee that supported this recommendation. There were a handful of dissenters, but the overall was a majority. The plan is multimodal with improvements and expansion of bus service, complete streets, paratransit and dial ride for people with disabilities, and our seniors and elderly population, and high-capacity transit and light rail. I cannot emphasize enough how important this transportation plan is for people with disabilities who rely upon it so heavily for their basic existence, like going to the doctor, the supermarket, or getting to church. And maybe, probably even more important, to become a means to becoming more economically empowered, to go to college, get an education, and eventually go to work and get that job. I'd also like to put a plug in for the light rail stop at 48th Street in Washington. That's near the Disability Empowerment Center and the Virginia Piper Sports and Fitness Center for people with disabilities. The rail stop that has been proposed at 48th Street in Washington is mentioned in this report and is mentioned as being vitally needed and had the full support of the committee. And it is also probably fair to say that the funding plan as proposed will easily provide the necessary funding to construct this new stop. However, I would like to...
Just wrap up, yeah, when you get a chance.
Okay, however, I would like to propose that the council more explicitly identify this new light rail stop as a piece of the recommendation. And with that, I fully support this recommendation, and thanks, City Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pangrazio, for serving on the committee and your leadership as a great advocate for those living with disabilities to be more independent and mobile. Next speaker will be Abraham James, followed by Ms. Becky Fenger. Mr. James.
Thank you. As the chair of the Citizen Transit Commission and a member of the Citizen Committee on the Future of Transportation, I wholeheartedly support this comprehensive transportation plan. I'm also in support of the Transportation Infrastructure Subcommittee plan recommendations and modifications. I do hope that the mayor and city council members will support this transportation plan. And finally, to the citizens of Phoenix, this transportation plan will be a positive investment for the future of our city. This plan is worthy of our support. And for 30 years, yes, I think we can do this. I know we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. James, for serving on the committee, your leadership on so many other key city boards. Ms. Becky Fenger, followed by Mr. Bill Smith of Central Station. Ms. Fenger, good to see you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and Council. So little time, that's $15 billion a minute, 2 minutes. I am the chair of No Tax for More Tracks. We can clear up some things right here with these figures. First of all, Mayor, I heard you say that Phoenix is great, we're going to keep on growing, therefore we must reduce pollution and congestion. Light rail does nothing to decrease pollution and congestion. In fact, billed at grade, it increases both. So why should we pay nearly tens of billions of dollars to get more pollution and congestion? And these aren't my figures, as was stated before, like I pulled them out of a hat. These are Valley Metro's final environmental impact statement to the feds to draw down money. It was buried in the report, but it's true. I defy anyone to prove that wrong, and it has not been allowed to get out to the public, certainly not to the people. And I doubt the commission heard about it either. Second thing, very important, Jim, we've got to get this straight once and for all. Based on reported ridership of transit and urban road traffic for the Phoenix metro region, transit, rail, and bus combined, they account for less than 1% of the person miles of travel. Rail alone accounts for only 0.2%, and so together you have only 1%. These 4% are wild pie in the sky. We wish it were true. To have Marty Schultz talk about the great success of the numbers, do you realize after you spend $30 billion and people don't want to get out of your cars, you will still have only 1% of the traveling people in the greater Phoenix area riding light rail. So cost benefits, does that do any good? You could do much more. There's much better ways that were never allowed to be brought up. And Victor Mendez came to town, Deputy Secretary of Transportation, to tell, he flew to Phoenix to teach the transit pushers just how to put one over on the people. He held up an iPod, or one of the gadgets, I'm an older woman, and said, do I need 5 of these? No. But Madison Avenue convinced me that I need 5 of these. And therefore, we have to do this, people. We have to get the Phoenix voters to approve something that they don't even know they want. That's underhanded. That's not honest. It was done that way, and I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers. And there's many, many better ways. And as far as your little community meetings that you rave about, I went to the library. And because for 18 years I've watched how these piles of money, where they go and how they go. First of all, it was locked. Then I spent a half an hour and I talked to 2 officials with the Transit Department who never allowed, online, this survey was rigged. We were never allowed to get what we wanted to say. You can answer this box or that box, but that box wasn't there. It was a complete sham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fingers. Good to see you again. Mr. Bill Smith is next, followed by Lisa Parks.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for hearing me today. My name is Bill Smith with Smithfield Properties. I'm proud to say that my firm has been selected by the city to develop the Central Station parcel bounded by Central Avenue, First Avenue, and Van Buren and Polk. And I can tell you, today I'm not going to annihilate you with any statistics. I have no numbers, only to share with you the following information. First of all, my firm would unequivocally not be interested in investing $50 million in this process if it were not for being on the light rail. But I thought perhaps that you might find more interesting the perception of the national credit retail community relative to the site, because we're now fully engaged with a 50,000 square foot national credit user to anchor the base of this building. And in yesterday's meeting, this meeting is as fresh as 24 hours ago, there was a very limited discussion about the number of parking spaces that a 50,000 square foot user would use. Rather, the discussion was focused, as a matter of fact, on being on 2 light rail stops and how that they felt that broadened the number of shoppers that were going to be available to them, and how that this store would be merchandised to be tailored to the use of the light rail. And I don't think this one retailer is unique. I think that in every city in the country, most of you probably know, my firm was started in Chicago, and so we're accustomed to using public transportation and mixed-use buildings, which is what we're contemplating for the Central Station development. I think it's important to be able to look past. I've listened to much of the testimony. There's a tremendous amount of focus on the statistical evidence. But beyond that, it's really hard to measure statistical evidence in the light of a national credit retailer telling you, but for the light rail, we wouldn't come, and from a developer saying, but for the light rail, we wouldn't be making a $50 million investment in the city. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Smith, thank you very much. I have a quick question. When is your groundbreaking? I want to put it on my calendar right now. Are you prepared to give a date?
I would say to you that there are some issues still being worked out by the city, which I'm confident they will, but I fully expect the building to open in mid-17.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lisa Parks, you're next, and then followed by Leonard Clark.
Here, I just want to show you that District 7's hot.
Is that a project in District 7? Ms. Lisa Parks? Is she here to provide testimony? Other than Leonard Clark will be next then, and Ms. Parks comes back, we'll have her jump up, followed by Jeff Malosnik.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Lifetime resident of Phoenix, born right down the street at Good Samaritan Hospital. I just want to first of all say, I know that you're being very conscientious, but I'm one of those poor people. I proudly am one of the poor, the people that you say this is going to help, and also the rest of the city. I just don't feel comfortable. I mean, there's a huge committee here of people with three-piece suits on, and I've got my Levi pants on and my shirt here, and I just don't find the answers forthcoming, because one of the council members asked about what percentage of the people actually use the light rail as compared to the total figures, and I just didn't feel like the answers were clearly forthcoming. Then I've also read what other citizens had to say on Arizona Republic's site. The county and MAG, they are supposed to be coming up with an idea to extend their transportation tax and increase the amounts. I feel that more of the heavy infrastructure that you're talking about might be dealt with better at the county level, whereas we deal with the maintenance and we deal with taking care of these things. And, not least of all, I just find this a regressive sales tax that's going on here. I don't think it's going to, if you don't pass it, and I do have physically and cognitively disabled loved ones and friends who have to use this vital transportation system, but I just don't find that you're being clear enough. I find that with the horrible state of our education affairs, which you might say, Leonard, that has nothing to do with the city of Phoenix. It is not germane to what is going on, but you know as well as I, tomorrow you'll be voting on something for $100 million dealing with education. We can't just view ourselves as a city-state and the rest of the cities around us and the whole state of Arizona separate from us. What we do is going to affect the rest of the state. And our education right now, if they do ask for more, an increase in education, I dare say our conservative friends at the legislature asked for more, like Governor Brewer had, and when you've already imposed this tax, it could possibly hurt us. I don't think it's going to hurt us right now to hold a little bit. I love your vision, Mayor. I love it, but I think right now I don't have enough clear answers, and I'm just a normal citizen, but I don't like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Mr. Jeff Malosnik is the next speaker, followed by Ms. Greta Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I'd just like to say thank you to the committee, too. I know you guys put a ton of effort into this, and it is really representative of the fact that our community is passionate about its diversity, and I think that that's what this discussion is about. People use the word multimodal. That's a planner's word, and thank God for planners, because if it weren't for people that were doing strategic planning like this, people like us in the development community wouldn't have things to react to. If you're in the suburbs, you'll find us developing corners around intersections and freeways. But in the infill world, we're chasing different forms of transportation because you can't solve all the problems that we have in the interior of the city with just one. People that come downtown ride all sorts of different ways. Everybody has their preference, and I don't think it's up to us to lean towards one or towards the other than to say everybody has a different need. Cityscape, the property that we invested $500 million into in 2005, wouldn't have existed if but not for light rail and all the means of transportation for people to get to and from downtown. So thank you again for all your effort. Sincerely appreciate it and look forward to doing more work in the city of Phoenix.
Would you entertain a question?
Councilman, please, of course. Mr. Malosnik.
I thought Super Bowl Central was a major success, and you have one of the largest parking garages in downtown. Was it enough, and was light rail helpful?
No. I mean, to answer the question on parking, it's the intangible cost of vehicular transportation. And in an infill site, it's one of the greatest expenses that we have. So you're constantly trying to solve for parking. You can never give enough. So if you increase the size of the freeways to take more traffic, you're going to have to find places for those people to park when they get to the destination they want to go to. And one of the greatest advantages we had in downtown was I referred to it as a chairlift. We could put people on the light rail and they could just ride the chairlift right in regardless of how much traffic was on the street. It would take you a half an hour to go from First Avenue and Jefferson to 2nd Street in Jefferson, but if you were on the light rail, you could make it all the way around really fast. So it was great. It was phenomenal.
Chef, thank you for making D7 hotter.
All right. Next speaker will be Greta Rogers, followed by Mark Davis.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council and members in attendance. My name is Greta Rogers. I learned recently of this proposal that was going to be coming before you today at Policy. This is a mix of oil and water or milk and vinegar. Transportation and public safety are not compatible to be on one ballot. This is politically clever to pull at the heartstrings for public safety to get this passed. It's a cheap shot. The economy of Phoenix and the Phoenix citizens have not yet arrived at a level of economic stability, and this state has historically lagged nationally since the 2008 Depression began. And we aren't out of it yet. We're improving, but we lag nationally. And that's a fact. And it is basically verified in the Saturday business section last Saturday of the New York Times. And the last quarter nationally was down 2.2% from the previous quarter, and this is the way things are going. The citizens passed in 2004, I believe it was 2004, a ballot measure for public safety to hire more personnel, train, certify them to join the force on their probationary period before they can be fully certified. We have never, since 2004, or whatever the year was, had a report on that. Its accomplishment or lack thereof, and a full audit. I want a report on this at the next formal meeting or no later than the 4/1 formal meeting. We deserve nothing less. It's time to reevaluate this proposal and break it out into two separate ballot measures: police and fire and transportation separately. And also, you've given short shrift to the street infrastructure, replacement, repair, and general maintenance. And the streets in the older part of this city, from Northern to Baseline and 35th Avenue to 64th Street, are in terrible condition. This is a very, very cheap shot by you, Mayor, and the council. I hope people will vote against it if this is the way you put it on the ballot. You have time to separate the two and do it correctly.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers, very much. The next speaker will be Mark Davis, followed by Carl Oberg.
Hello, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and council members. Davis Enterprises, and our firm has been investing in real estate projects in Phoenix since 1948. Grandfather moved to town. And we're a locally based investment company that redevelops projects. Six of them are less than a mile from the current light rail system. And we do that on purpose because we believe in this light rail system and it's yielded benefits to us. Most recently, our company with PB Bell was selected to redevelop the former Jefferson Hotel, Barrister Place building. and we're adding to that portfolio, and we're looking at other sites too. So comprehensive transportation plan is good for Phoenix. And there's 3 quick reasons why. First, access to public transportation is a key factor in decisions that we use to pursue projects, as well as specifically in the Jefferson Barrister property investment. Second, the proximity of light rail creates a customer experience to access that is very unique and attractive to our tenants, which are our customers. And continued growth and development of the light rail system will make urban projects like ones we're involved in more successful. Third and lastly, dense urban projects like ours work in areas where effective and comprehensive access to public transportation exists. And density, it is density that builds a walkable, safe, and thriving neighborhoods with a mix of interesting uses. So it's exciting, from my perspective, to see Phoenix taking urbanism to a new level. And I'm proud to be part of creating and living in downtown Phoenix and rejuvenating our urban city. And I see transportation as an essential part of urban success. So our company supports the comprehensive transportation plan that's been proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis, for taking the time to come down here. Mr. Carl Oberg is next, followed by Ms. Diane Barker.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I follow my good friend Mark. He actually is a neighbor of mine and a business partner. I kind of want to echo what Mark says, but I also, first of all, I'm a 5th-generation Arizonan and been a downtown Phoenix resident for over 20 years. And I have to tell you, I grew up in Flagstaff and always thought that Flagstaff was my home. But living here in downtown Phoenix, it's a total change. Phoenix is my home. And I don't have anything to benefit from a lot of this, you know, growing our light rail system, growing our bus transit, because I actually live within a couple blocks from a station, and my family and I constantly use the light rail system and the bicycle. And by the way, I heard a few people talk about how great it was that the bicycle, you know, for all these bicycle communities giving away helmets and everything. So the thing about what Marty Schultz and the individuals have put together, in my opinion, isn't great for me down in Phoenix and downtown, but it's great for everybody in Phoenix downtown or in Phoenix, period. It's one of those things that, you know, 2 people are arguing about two kids, let's say, are arguing about who gets more spaghetti. It doesn't matter because they're both getting spaghetti. In my opinion, when people start fighting things because they want to do what's best for them in their area and they're not thinking about the whole area, that's kind of disturbing. One of the things that the young lady stated before Mr. Davis was up here was somewhat true about how we are lagging in the national eyes. You know why we're lagging? Because we're not creating jobs. If we create jobs, we won't be lagging. And by the way, in my industry, and I am a professional in transportation, and a lot of my colleagues here will tell you that if you build it, they will come. So, Mr. Mayor and Council, I am highly begging you to approve this, because not only will it help us as a community and a city, but it's going to help my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oberg. Ms. Diane Barker is next, followed by Mr. Robert Graham.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm in District 7. My name's Diane Barker, and I've got a good councilman, Nalkowski. I saw you on TV recently. Yay, yay, yay. What a spirit. And I know you had said to me, hey, I want somebody involved in transit that uses it. Well, I'm the woman. I've been, as far as that goes, one of them that uses transit. It's gone on 3 decades. I haven't had to buy a car, and I came out here from having cars from being in real estate. But the bus system made it so that I was able to be independent because it got me to work, and then I got my own place, and like that. What I am not supporting this, and I'll tell you why, because there's a bigger picture, And your authority is to be working with ADOT to develop transit. I found the working performance from the county gave it to me with distinct duties, and I don't believe this has fully been vetted with MAG. MAG's got the spine study, which is here in Phoenix. 40% of the congestion is on that. And we've got problems going to Tucson. There's a bigger plan, there's a bigger picture, and I don't foresee going to government to asking for all this money. Is that the right plan? People will pay for it, not only the transportation and the freight that it could be carrying. Now, it's about as far as, and I know you put work in the plan, and thank you for the information, but I still haven't found a substantial audit of the transit system that is not agreed upon procedures, and folks, that's not an opinion. And I am still looking for that. The promises of Transit 2000 aren't complete. 2/3 was supposed to go for buses, and we put light rail in the priority. And also, this is important, Mr. Schultz' diagram said 65% of the voters approved of this. A special election, if you look into it, is supposed to have 2/3 votes. So how did this get passed? And what are we doing? Because you needed 66%, okay? And that's 1% off. I am maybe the 1% that uses transit. I'm not the 1% that rules the world, and I'm not against wealth, but there is more in job creation by another plan, and we need to get with MAG for the big picture.
Thank you, Ms. Barker, very much. Mr. Graham is next, followed by former Councilman Craig Tripkin. Mr. Graham.
Mayor Stanton, council members, I appreciate your taking up this issue. I think it's very important. My name is Bob Graham. I'm an architect and planner. My most relevant associations are a longtime member of the Central City Village Planning Committee, and I'm also president of the Grand Avenue Rail Project, which is a nonprofit group of citizens working towards restoring a historic streetcar into operation in downtown Phoenix. I'm here obviously in support of this measure, but specifically I'm here in support of the long-range planning process. And as a planning committee member, I go back to the general plan that we are currently working on. We'll be coming to council pretty soon. And a lot of work is put into that general plan. And a very broad consensus was reached on some core values. And I just want to remind everyone of some of those core values that are inherent to the general plan that we're considering. Connecting people and places, strengthening our economy, creating a sustainable city, and creating a more vibrant downtown. And I'm convinced that this plan that's on the table, a comprehensive transportation plan, really is in support of the general plan that we've developed, and that it all works together. And I think that's a very important concept, and I very much urge you to move this forward to the voters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. I believe the general plan proposal will be on our agenda tomorrow. And if passed by this council and this is passed, both would appear on the same ballot this August. Former Councilman Craig Tripkin is next, followed by Francis Nucky.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I want to first say I was very honored to be involved with this process. I very much appreciate the Council's support in appointing me to this committee. I learned several things in this process, and I want to just kind of tell you what my thinking process was. First, I started out as a light rail skeptic. And I started out saying, well, you know, we could add this many more buses, we could do this much more for streets. And I got to say, I became absolutely convinced that a great city needs to have great vision. That if we are going to be a great city, we need to demonstrate and have economic development associated with that. We must demonstrate to the world that we are thinking as a great city should think. And I think that's very important. Secondly, I learned a lot about the safety net implications of transit. We've heard how many people are being moved, you know, how much of the percentage of the population is being moved. Well, let's ask how many of the lower income people are being moved, or how many of the disabled people are being moved, or how many of the elderly people are being moved. Let's ask those questions, because transportation is a safety net, as a vital thing. Transportation is a fixed cost for people. Whether you have if you have a 20-year-old car, costs you $2,000 a year to keep it up. If you have a brand new car, it costs you $2,000 for car payments. Transportation tends to be a fixed cost. This is something which I think is a vital element of making all neighborhoods and all people in this city, giving them an opportunity to have jobs and to be productive citizens, and for the city to grow accordingly and the city's tax base to grow accordingly. Lastly, I guess I would say I don't want to overlook the street needs and the changes that have occurred. I left this city in 2000, and I was away for 13 years. And I came back, and I was amazed at two things. Number one, the benefits that the light rail offered and how exciting it was as an element, and also at how we let our streets decline. And I think between complete streets programs being emphasized and maintenance, which is way behind schedule, I think we are not showing the pride that I would like to see us show, and I think a great city should show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman, for your service on the committee, and we're glad you're back in Phoenix. Next speaker will be Francis Nucky, followed by Roger Bale. Okay. Roger Bale is next, followed by Diane Brown.
Hi, my name is Roger Bailey.
Bailey, I apologize.
That's
Thank you. Good to
okay.
see you.
I live in District 3. I'm on the Paradise Valley Village Planning Committee. I was on the Citizens Commission, too. And I support the continued investment in transit and transportation infrastructure in the city of Phoenix, and let me tell you why. I believe that having a vibrant public transit system is one of the keys to creating a place that attracts investments and jobs, supports an urban lifestyle not tied to the automobile, and is a requirement for those urban areas that will survive and thrive in this century and beyond. Included in that is the attraction and retention of the best and brightest seeking that lifestyle that will fuel this continued success for the city and state. One of the looming financial bombs in our country is our aging infrastructure across the country. It's easy in the short term to neglect funding for infrastructure, maintenance, and construction in lieu of other priorities until at some point the accumulated need becomes almost insurmountable. This is a precursor of failing community, in my opinion, and the key to this is staying ahead of it. Beyond transit, the recommendations of the Citizens Committee and subsequently the subcommittee, the Transportation Subcommittee, go a significant way in providing funding for the portions of the current streets transportation system. I was personally an advocate of having a larger portion of the unfunded streets program addressed with the final approved revenue stream. However, one of the recommendations that did make it through was for the city leadership to take a hard look in a serious way to address the unfunded portion of the streets program over the duration of the funding stream and the parallel with the transit-related items. There were suggestions that Marty articulated in his presentations that the Citizens Committee recommended for other funding vehicles to contribute to the unfunded portion of the streets program. And I hope and recommend that the city staff continue looking at those things. With that, I encourage the City Council to move forward and ratify the recommendation in front of you and move this on to the citizens for a vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey, for being here. And
Can I add one more thing? Larry
Please.
Lazarus made me say that he had to step out. He won't be able to speak today because he's meeting with a client who's planning to build a project along the light rail.
Hey, Larry's on message. That's great. I do have a card for him, so we'll make note of that. Ms. Brown is next, followed by Roy Miller. Good to see you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Stanton, council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this afternoon. My name is Diane Brown. I'm the executive director for the Arizona Public Interest Research Group, Arizona PIRG. We are a statewide organization based here in Phoenix. On behalf of Arizona PIRG, I want to start off by thanking you, the City of Phoenix Transit and Street Transportation Departments, Valley Metro, the Citizens Commission, and others who are helping to lead the way for more transportation options for Phoenix residents and tourists. As an organization that highly encourages opportunities for public input into public policy, we also want to convey our appreciation for the number of opportunities throughout the city to provide comments on the proposal before you, particularly those that were offered in the evening, which is a huge benefit, as you know, to the citizens of Phoenix. Also, for the opportunity for folks who chose not to attend one of those to submit input electronically. For those familiar with Arizona PIRG, you likely know that it is not very often that there's a policy before decision makers where we don't seek improvements to be made before it gets incorporated before a vote. However, in this instance, we believe that the proposed policy before you deserves your vote and that of the Phoenix voters. You have already heard and read many benefits regarding this proposal, and while there are a lot of economic as well as air quality public health benefits that are important to keep in mind, there's one other piece of research that we think is really important for your consideration in voting yes on this, and that is that Arizonans are choosing to shift how they travel. In fact, personal vehicle travel has decreased, and the number of trips and the number of miles traveled by public transportation has increased in our state. More specifically, we released this report along with St. Luke's Health Initiatives, Bikes, Trains, and Less Driving that found that between 2005 and 2012, Arizona saw a 10.5% decline in annual vehicles mile traveled per capita. The trend away from driving is led by the millennial generation. We know that you all are working very hard, as are others, to keep more young adults here in Phoenix, to bring other young talent here to help benefit our economic sector. And that is a sector that is continuing to choose public transportation and to walk or bike to their destination. You've already heard a little bit about the senior citizen population, disabled Arizonans, and again, the benefits that public transportation and that this proposal offers to those individuals. For Arizona PIRG, when we take into account the trends that are leading to less driving, and when we also look at the components of a comprehensive transportation policy, for us it includes expanding light rail and bus service, both the lines and hours throughout Phoenix, implementing the Complete Streets ordinances that you recently adopted to create more bike-friendly and walkable communities, ensuring fix-it first street improvements, and providing oversight of both the projects and the budgets. The proposal before you, we believe, contains each of those components, and we encourage you to vote yes today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown, for your testimony. Mr. Miller is next, followed by Haley Ritter.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I was on the Citizens Commission. I voted against the final proposal. There's far too much money in that proposal for rail. I think rail is essentially a 19th century solution to a 21st century problem. It's not cost effective, it's inflexible, and it does add to congestion and pollution at grade rather than reduce it. A much better focus would have been to emphasize street improvements. I think even though it's been mentioned several times, it's still insufficient. We should focus on other less costly options like traffic light synchronization, hot lanes, time of use pricing. I would stomp my foot on that one. That's a very important one. On-demand point-to-point transportation modes such as Uber, Lyft, and rideshare. I believe if we did this, there would be no need for a tax increase. And finally, I think the idea of combining this with the $16 million for police is simply extortion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for your testimony and your service on the Citizens Committee. Is Haley Ritter here? Oh, good to see you. Followed by Mark Sorensen.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. As usual, my train of thought shifts and I'm having a slight seizure at the moment, but that's okay. I have nothing to worry about. I'm just giggling hysterically. Thank you for your patience. First of all, I just want to thank the Streets and Transportation Department from the City of Phoenix. I know that there's a lot of pressure right now on making this decision and doing the best with all of our funding and with the taxes and everything, and I agree with this proposal 100%. I think that light rail expansion and increased bus service hours are very, very important to me as a person with epilepsy, obviously, who travels by bicycle. I think this is a great, exciting opportunity for the city. And I also want to thank the Streets and Transportation Department for doing an overlay project recently in my neighborhood. You know, there's a lot of deteriorating streets, as many people have mentioned, which is definitely an important thing for the city to keep up with. And this increased tax would, I believe, hopefully fund a lot of the programs that are that are up and coming that really need attention, you know, potholes in all of our streets and flooding and just random, you know, important infrastructure needs that the city has. So please go ahead and vote yes for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ritter. Mr. Sorensen is next, followed by Mr. Walt Gray.
Good afternoon, members of the council, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to, first of all, thank the committee for putting together this comprehensive plan, and I think there's a lot of good hard work done, and I think they've made a good case that there should be a tremendous amount of support for this plan. A couple of things I just wanted to say is I've been in the Valley since 1989, been a resident of the state since 1982. Got in this business as a kid that thought that making cities better was a noble idea, and I've been a student of that for most of my life. Been involved in the transit program in the Phoenix area now since I moved here in '89, and it's really a tribute to this council and members of this community to see the successes that we've made here. We've put Phoenix on the map. The Super Bowl, I think, was a highlight. Other thing I'd like to say, I'm in this business. I do a lot of work around the country. I'd like to just make a note that the investment that's been done in Phoenix has been an excellent investment. Things are done on time. Things are done on budget. There's very few cities in the country that I think can actually say that they've accomplished that. We've accomplished that here, and I think this plan is a great plan, and it'll do a long way to be successful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sorensen. Mr. Walt Gray is next, followed by David Schwartz, representing Friends of Transit, if he's here. Do you have to leave?
I saw him get up.
All right, Mr. Gray had to leave?
I saw him walk out.
Okay, I apologize. Mr. Gray wanted to be in opposition to the item. I think he supports some elements of the plan, but not all elements, but it was ultimately opposed to the item. David Schwartz is next, followed by Sean Sweat.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. My name is David Schwartz, and I have the honor and the privilege to serve as the Executive Director for Friends of Transit. First of all, you know, what's really good about is when you're at the end of the day talking is most of the things have been said. So my 20-minute conversation, I will cut it down to 2 minutes. So thank you. So 2 weeks ago, I had a chance to come before the Transportation Subcommittee and talk about this. And I talked about the value of transit, which in a couple days later, we were having our 13th annual Friends of Transit conference. And the theme of the conference was the value of transit. So I made a shout out there, and I can tell you a couple days later we sold out. We had more than 300 people came and attended. It was sold out. Many of those people are here, about the same number of people here. So I want to thank all of them for coming and talking. So we talked about the value of transit. You know, the value can be about the freedoms you have, your mobility, but I want to talk a little bit about the economic benefits. You know, you guys do a great job running a transit system with the limited dollars you have. With more dollars, you'll be able to do amazing stuff. You know, Steve Banta mentioned at our conference that for every dollar that's invested, you get a $7 return on economic development. And I don't know about you, but if I could figure out how to get my 401k to do that, I probably wouldn't even need to be here today. You know, Councilwoman Gallego talked about Mobile Mini moving because of light rail. State Farm moving because, or opening their headquarters because of light rail. And there are dozens more of examples like that. You know, according to the American Public Transportation Association, for every $100 million you invest, it creates 3,600 jobs. And just think about the number of jobs. Think about the economic benefits that you will bring, the value of transit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for your testimony here today. The next speaker will be Sean Sweat, followed by Suzanne Day.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor, Council. I'm a resident of Phoenix. I used to live in Chandler, but the light rail is why I'm here today. So I think it has, from personal experience, a fairly relevant impact on where some people decide to live when they're looking around. Also, there's been a lot of talk about streets and how that factors in. I think it's important to note, just to throw one little data tidbit out there, that in terms of center line miles, we have 4 times as many roads as New York City does per capita. And when you're talking about how to maintain that, it gets difficult because it obviously means we have a quarter of the tax base per road for maintenance. So a plan such as this is exciting to me because what this is doing is this is finding ways to increase capacity for population growth without necessarily adding a lot more roads. And that's important, I believe, for long-term fiscal health. So I'm excited to see the South Central extension finally have a way to get funding. I'm excited to see the West extension finding a way to get funding, and I'm excited to see the bicycle master plan, which I don't think anyone's brought up yet. So that I get this one. This is a new one for me. That we have approved in Phoenix, but we don't have a funding mechanism at the moment. So this is the avenue for that, and that excites me as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sweat. Next speaker will be Suzanne Day. Well, is Ms. Day here? She was in favor of the proposed item. There are a couple other. Lisa Parks, did she have the chance to return? Ms. Parks, who's such a strong bicycle advocate, was in favor of the proposal. I saw Mel Hanna here. I think he had to leave. He's also in favor. And then Larry Lazarus, who was already mentioned, is in favor of the item. Mr. Zavko, you'll be next speaker, followed by Jack Kaiser.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the council. My name is Stanko Zovko. You were close in the pronunciation. It's a tough one. And I work at the Southwest Fair Housing Council. We're a statewide civil rights organization. And as part of our work, we analyze issues of minority concentrations of poverty. We do this kind of work for federal agencies such as HUD and various jurisdictions throughout the state when they seek federal funding such as CDBG grants, which are important funding for various things throughout the community. When looking at these areas, HUD asks us to look at them in terms of areas of opportunity, which is areas of jobs, educational choices, quality and variety of housing, and so forth. Oftentimes, these minority areas lack opportunities, so the question becomes, do they have access to opportunities in neighboring areas? And this is where transit comes into play. Transit plays a disproportionately higher role in these communities, as oftentimes the populations we look at are too cost-burdened to afford an automobile, so transit provides that access to these crucial opportunities. Not improving transit funding, I'm afraid, would have a disparate impact on the high minority areas and those with disabilities. In addition to the benefits, the social benefits, there are fiscal ones as well. Transit investment, when done correctly and responsibly, which is probably the biggest caveat in this entire argument, can actually save the city money in long term. Those that look at the initial cost to invest in this kind of infrastructure as prohibitive are taking a very simple and short-sighted view of the issue. The fact of the matter is that the right kind of transit investment encourages growth of underdeveloped areas and provides the city a greater return on their already existing infrastructure investments. The cost of such things such as roads, pipes, police coverage all grow with the more horizontal space that's used. In Phoenix, we have a lot of that horizontal space. We see a lot of parcels fronting low intensity, poorly performing development or vacant lots that doesn't recoup any of that cost at all. There's a lot of 6-lane streets adjacent to vacant lots, and those aren't paying for those 6-lane streets. Transit is a way to promote development of these parcels and to get more return on things that are already costing us money and make the city more financially solvent as well. This growth is something that we've already seen along the light rail, and I believe the community sentiment and opinion of different kinds of transit are beginning to shift positively to the point that we can see this type of positive growth for a variety of other transit investments. I like to think of transit investment as buying double-pane windows for a home. Sure, the upfront cost is high, but as long as it still gets hot and you still have an air conditioner running, you will one day be very happy that you made that purchase. You might not see the savings every month, but in 10 or 20 years, you'll be very glad that you did it. I share the idea that we need lower taxes, actually, but it's really about return on investment. And to be able to have future lower taxes, you need a better investment up front, and that's part of the transit tax. So I encourage the council to make the decision to go
Thanks for coming down. Thanks for your testimony very, very much. Next speaker will be Jack Kaiser, followed by Jennifer Donaldson. Mr. Kaiser.
Well, good day, Mayor and Council. I'm Jack Kaiser. I live at 6717 North 30th Drive, 85017. And can you hold the clock while I make a transparency statement that the clerk's office recommends I make, serving
Yes.
on some boards? Okay. I've served as vice chair on West Phoenix Revitalization Community Advisory Board since its inception in 2006, but I am not here representing that body, and I have been a member for approximately 10 years of Alhambra Village Planning Committee and past chair, but I am not here representing them today. End of transparency statement. Okay. I've been a student of urban systems for over 41 years, spending time with the hugely successful architect and developer John Portman in Atlanta in '74, known for his high Regency designs, and they had a great transportation system in '74 with their elevated rail. And also spent time in Portland with Ted Savinar, who was a consultant on our light rail. At any rate, I want to note that I had passed out to you the Canyon Corridor magazine, Canyon Corridor Connections. Please turn to page 7. Stop the clock while you do that.
Jack, please, everyone turn to page 4 first.
Yeah. Page 4 is the
Councilwoman
district map.
There.
Page 7 is the Canyon
Councilman
Corridor.
Valenzuela, self-promotion will not count against your time.
Yeah. But I'm here to speak
But Laura's picture's bigger.
as a resident and someone who's heavily invested in the development of the Canyon Corridor area. And by the way, just as of this weekend, where our next issue is being put to bed, and we have added from Dunlap to Peoria to the Canyon Corridor area. So we now have Metro Center, so we have 2 major economic engines in Grand Canyon University and the newly to be revitalized Metro Center. So we have 2 regional malls, we have 2 transit centers, and 2 village cores now in the Canyon Corridor. We have the longest residential dense corridor in the metro area in 27th Avenue, which is 5 miles long. So we have a high density there of residents and workers and shoppers. And then we have 19th and 23rd, which is a high retail and business corridor. And I was going to get to this. That can't be 2 minutes.
It is, but you have an extra 20 seconds, so go ahead.
Okay. At any rate, we want to connect that with a bus route to connect the people with the places that they use. Transportation infrastructure pays back dividends over many years. The ROI is well over 50 years. We have the same costs to add lanes to our streets. I'm addressing this to Councilman Waring. May I have your attention? To add lanes to our streets, we still have to acquire property. We have to do utility discovery and relocation and other costs that we have with adding lanes. With light rail, we have infrastructure that gives investors certainty that the transit stops will be clusters of economic activity, much more certainty than we have on our arteries. And we've proven that with light rail, that we have those clusters of economic activity. Specifically in Canyon Corridor, we need light, as I mentioned, we need that bus route, but we need light rail to get to Grand Canyon. They are growing to 25 students and beyond, I believe well beyond, and we need to connect that wonderful economic engine for Phoenix to the rest of the metro area. So I urge you to this is something that can only be done with the will of the people of the city of Phoenix. Please put it on the ballot so the people can decide. It's the people of Phoenix that can decide this rather than your personal disposition on this. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, do you have a question?
Yeah, I actually heard everything you said, so you did have my undivided attention. So I would say this. I don't know if anybody's traveled near, say, 19th Avenue recently. The disruption there is pretty amazing.
Yeah, but we have that when we add to the freeway, when we add lanes to streets.
Well,
It's the same disruption.
Earlier, I appreciate if you're not interrupt me again, so thank you.
I'm sorry.
I guess I would say this. Before it was mentioned that maybe, somehow disruptions in one level are okay, but there's disruption when you build stuff. So it's not any better or worse when you build light rail versus a freeway. And I had some more questions, so
All right,
I'll save that to the end. I will say there was another fella, and I don't see him, light blue shirt. In any case, he said something about, I find it discouraging or something along those lines when people are talking about their districts and so forth. Well, first of all, those are the people I represent, so there's that. But second, he lived downtown, and I guess he walks to the light rail station. Well, that's great for him, but how many people are doing that? It's a probably very small percentage. So it's terrific that he feels like he's already got the light rail by his house where he can walk to it. That's terrific. That is nobody in my district. People in my district got to drive 20 miles to get to it. And people, if they did build it to Paradise Valley Mall, so I'm 47, that might happen when I'm like 70, hopefully not still commuting, but whatever. So the people 20 years from now who have this, that's going to be great for them, I guess, if they live somewhere near Paradise Valley Mall. But it's not going to be so great for the people who live in Tremonto in my district and have to drive 40 minutes on unexpanded freeways to get to the Paradise Valley Mall to take the light rail. So I think the apples to apples comparison people were making about how many people are riding and how many people are moved and so forth isn't necessarily the case. I can discuss that.
All right, thank you very much. Well, let's have a chance to make statements later on before the vote. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiser, for your testimony and your leadership in the Canyon Corridor. Go Lopes. Ms. Donaldson, good to see you, and then followed by Brent Kleinman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Jennifer Donaldson. I'm the project engineer for the construction manager at risk, currently building the light rail extension along 19th Avenue. I moved here in 2005 and had the pleasure of working for the contractor who built all the stations on the original 20 miles. Our office was located at 12th Street and Washington, and quite frankly, myself and my coworkers couldn't wait to get out of Phoenix. It was a ghost town at 5 o'clock. We navigated by the sunken parking lots downtown, and when the economy tanked and the construction was over, we left. My coworkers left, I left. We took our educations, our well-paying jobs, our children, our value in education, and we left because there was nothing here for us. In 2012, I had the opportunity to come back, and I was amazed at the transformation in downtown Phoenix. It is unbelievable. The stores, the life, the residents, all the investment that has happened along that corridor is unbelievable. It's being noticed. The residents along 19th Avenue, we are disruptive. Construction is disruptive. I don't think you can argue that. But they're excited. The schools are excited. Us as a contractor, the city, Valley Metro won the Lamp of Learning Award from the Washington Elementary School District because we have contributed so much to the community. Mr. Valenzuela is a huge supporter. The businesses are, Weinberger, the original Weinberger, has had one of its best days in the midst of construction. We closed Bethany Home Road. They were out there with signs. They're taking ownership, and they're very proud that the light rail is coming through their neighborhood. The business owners, there are 10 large apartment complexes along 19th Avenue. Their units are full, and rents are going up. This neighborhood is so proud of what we're doing, and it is disruptive, but I'll tell you why. In 3.2 miles of construction, we have relocated over 50 miles of utilities. In one of the oldest districts in Phoenix, we have installed new water lines that were so old when you excavated around them, they burst. They needed to be replaced. We have installed new roads, curb and gutter, sidewalks that are ADA compliant, sewers, storms. This is not just a light rail project. We have improved the infrastructure, we're improving the roads, we're improving sidewalks. There's a Chris Ridge retirement village. These people are excited because it keeps them independent. They can use the sidewalks to get to the light rail, and they can keep their independence. Personally, I'm invested. I love what I do. I love my job. I love my company. I work with some very educated, well-rounded individuals. We have well-paying jobs. We are interested in education. We love Phoenix. But if this goes away, we all do as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Donaldson. We love Weinberger. It is awesome. But Councilman Valenzuela, how does that fit within Fit Phoenix?
They have a, well, you know.
If you walk there, you're okay. All right.
If you walk.
All right, Brett Kleinman is next, followed by Michael Howard.
Sometimes you just got to do it, so visit Weinberger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Councilman, and the board that has put this together. I think I've had one or two too many Weinbergers myself. I may have to start walking a little more. Light rail in Phoenix is a very difficult topic because Phoenix and the greater Phoenix area has been so spread out geographically. I don't think you can ever look and see and say one route or two routes are going to get to all of the vice mayor's area or to any district completely. But the vision that this group has put together and the steps that they're taking to move forward are necessary steps, and they're steps that the City of Phoenix has to vote on because there's opportunity in this growth. 19th Avenue is going to look a lot better in 3 to 5 years than it does today. Washington, between Phoenix and Tempe, is a brand new rejuvenated area of Phoenix. The Central Corridor, buildings that were empty on Central around Camelback, are getting stores in, retail, office. The building it's there and it's tangible. Is the cost high? Yes. But is the investment worthwhile? Definitely. And I appreciate the city's ability to see that vision, look forward and say we may incur some hiccups in the road to get to where we need to go, but we're willing to work with that budget and we're willing to make this succeed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kleiman, for being here. Mr. Howard, Michael Howard is next, followed by Bill Smith already spoke, then Patrick Brennan.
Mayor Stanton and council members, thank you very much. I also work along 19th Avenue. I work with Jennifer Donaldson, who just spoke a few minutes ago, and my role on the project is that of a community relations manager. My wife and I moved here to Arizona in 2005, and we were fortunate enough to be part of the original 20-plus miles that went in, and I worked on the eastern 10 miles, basically from 26th Street out towards the east. Some of the development that we have seen there has been pretty phenomenal. The Disability Empowerment Center, 44th Street in Washington over there across from what used to be the Crown Plaza, used to be a pile of dirt and a Circle K. That looks pretty slick right now as well. I had a bunch of other things to say, but I kind of like to comment towards the disruption out there, since I deal with that on a daily basis. I work with our superintendents and the subcontractors and all the third-party utilities, and we do our very best to communicate the upcoming work to all the businesses out there. And I can't tell you, there is a lot of excitement out there. The 400-plus unit apartment complexes either have waiting lists right now. Rents have gone up roughly around 20%. There is a phenomenal amount of excitement as we watch the permanent features of this project take place, and I'm excited for this community like you wouldn't believe. Actually, when I leave here, I'm running back to go with Valley Metro Rail to Washington Neighborhood Association, because I just got a text from the lady who runs that says, "You're still coming tonight, right?" Well, monthly we go over there and we give a little presentation and we talk to all the folks about what's going on. We communicate the upcoming work. And right now, the main thing they want to see is the permanent, neat-looking stuff that's going in. And I really hope that you all support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howard. Mr. Brennan, Patrick Brennan, good to see you.
Hi, Patrick Brennan. I am in support of the transit plan. A lot of my talking points have already been taken, especially by the committee. Obviously, the economic development points, which you guys are far more qualified than I am to address. But I want to double down and actually say that I want to get this on the ballot, expect a resounding yes from the voters, and even challenge the city to move forward a little bit faster than planned on some of these projects, especially South Central Light Rail Extension. I'm a resident of South Phoenix. I live in the South Mountain Village. Collectively, myself and my family members own several properties between South Mountain Village and Levine Village, and that's an area that has been historically underserved by infrastructure, especially of the transportation sort. And I think that we stand to benefit a great deal from the economic development, where when we add things like light rail and high-capacity transit that are very permanent and static, that's where the other development comes in. That's where other people are eager to invest alongside it. Buses don't do that, trains do. And it's not that I want to see my part of town drastically changed because there's anything deficient about it. I want to see our potential realized. And obviously, when you look at some of the economic projections, we are perceived as a major infill and greenfield growth area for the city. And I just want to see us move forward with that. To some of the other points really quickly, if I have time, I've seen topics like environment come up, and public safety, and usage rates. I am not currently much of a light rail user. but I try to whenever I can if it's convenient. Apparently, the next train isn't scheduled to come near my house for about 10 years. So I would prefer for it to come right to my doorstep. If it will not, I'll take it regionally. That will get me out of my car. I'll stop polluting as much by driving as many miles. Safety will improve because we can take some cars off the streets. And let's face it, no one actually likes to drive, even if they say they do, or else we'd all still be driving muscle cars and enjoying the open road. Go on Baseline, go on Bell Road, go on any of these major corridors, and you curse at the traffic. And you sit on light rail, you read a book, you get some work done, and it improves quality of life for everyone. And I went over my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brennan. I think that's all the speaker cards I have. I'm going to quickly read those that did not wish to speak who wanted to have their opinion register. David Roderick, representing the Downtown Phoenix Partnership, is in favor of the proposal. Rex Culbrinson did not wish to speak, was in favor of the proposal. Donna Reiner, not wishing to speak. I am shocked. Ms. Reiner, where are you? Did she have to leave? Ms. Reiner is a great historic preservation advocate, not wishing to speak, in favor of the proposal. Edward Jensen, in favor. Jim McPherson, also in favor, not wishing to speak. Thomas Moore, in favor. And Amy Williamson, in favor. Ronaldo Cabrera III, in favor. Judy Burness, representing University of Arizona, in favor. Greg Walker, not wishing to speak, in favor of the item. Marcia Karasek, in favor. C.J. Hager, in favor. Connor DeShemaker, excuse me if I pronounce it incorrectly, in favor. Kenneth Steele, in favor. Megan Bearden, in favor. David Martin, representing the Arizona General Contractors, was here earlier. He's in favor, not wishing to speak. I think he had to go to his son's baseball game because it's baseball season now. Janet Traylor is in favor. Pat McNamara, representing LISC, Local Investment Services Corp., in favor. Steve Weiss, in favor. Karen Voye Karamart, in favor. Ryan Winkle, representing Rail Mesa, in favor. Shayna Hughes, in favor. Jason Donofrio, in favor. Vincent Lopez, in favor. Michelle Brachau, in favor. Paul Driver, in favor. Marie Chappell, in favor. Teresa Bryce, formerly of LISC, but a rail advocate, in favor. Ruth Chandler, opposed to the item. I want to make sure that gets registered for the record. Ms. Chandler is opposed to the item. Stephen Chandler, opposed to the proposal. Shannon Scutari, in favor of the proposal, also having served in the committee. Thank you, Ms. Scutari. Diane Scher, our longtime chair of the Citizens Transit Commission. Is she still here, I hope? Thank you for all your years of service to keep us on the straight and narrow when it comes to transportation issues in the city of Phoenix. She's in favor of the proposal. Chloe Brooks, in favor. Michael Williams, who was here earlier, also had to leave, is in favor of the item. Is anyone here from the public wishing to speak or have their voice registered on this item? Please come forward. I apologize. I have misplaced the card. But introduce yourself for the record and speak your mind.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. You read my card, but I marked the wrong card. I marked was available to speak on the white one instead of the yellow one.
The floor is yours. Sorry about that.
So I live basically where 32nd Street runs into South Mountain, on the north side of South Mountain, in something for another discussion, but it's actually Councilmember DeCicio's district, even though the neighbors across the street from me live in Councilman Gallego's district. So that's something for another topic. So I live basically 32nd and Baseline. I work at 47th and Van Buren. It's about an 8-mile drive or trip. I'm going to tell a little anecdotal story about me, and then hopefully that'll relate to very easily transition into what I'm trying to express. So in order to ride transit to work, it has to be available, has to be accessible, and it has to be some type of advantage to it. So I do have bus service available to get me to 44th and Van Buren, but it would take over an hour and a half and have multiple transfers. It is accessible. I can walk down to Baseline from my house, about a half a mile walk, and I can get to a bus stop and I can wait for the bus. So that's good, but there's no advantage to taking it. So carry that a little bit further. So my office is at 44th and Baseline, walking distance to 44th and Washington Light Rail Line. I could have driven my car down here. Probably with parking would have cost $12 to $15 to drive my car. Instead, I'm able to walk down to the light rail station for a $4 round-trip pass, all-day pass. I could take it as many times as I want all day. I'm able to get here and be here in front of you, and so I'm very thankful to that. So in that instance, from my office, light rail is very accessible, very advantageous, and very available. So I bring these up. I developed this AAA transit because I'm a transit planner. I've spent 25 years transit planning. Started my career in Denver. I've worked in, most recently was planning director in Seattle at the same time that they were opening the light rail line as you were opening the light rail line here. A friend of mine in Denver asked me when I moved to Phoenix, how is it that Phoenix is doing so great on their light rail when our new light rail line isn't doing anywhere as well, and we spent a lot more money? Seattle's isn't doing anywhere near as well and they spent a lot more money. It's because of this AAA. Phoenix has done it right along with the city of Tempe and Mesa. Our light rail system, our transit system, and this plan that has been proposed is available, accessible, and provides advantages. So I support it wholeheartedly and encourage you to allow us as citizens, residents of Phoenix to vote on it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony. Cards that have come in not wishing to speak but want to register their opinion. Alexander Albert in support. Jennifer Bixby in support. Stephen O'Brien also in support. Any additional members of the public wish to provide testimony for this council before we take a motion and then hear comments or questions on that motion? Ma'am, did you wish to say something? Please come forward as quickly as possible. Ms. Barker, our general policy is one time of testimony per item. Okay, well, in just a moment, we'll handle it for so please introduce yourself for the record and provide any testimony you may have. Thank you for coming.
Yep. My name is Kara Dasser. I am a double master's student at Arizona State University in Urban and Environmental Planning and Sustainability. I wasn't planning on talking today, but just being here has kind of, gotten to me a little bit. So I did want to have something to say. I am young and still learning. I am in the first year of my program, but everything I've learned through my studies has shown me that, investing in mass public transit is pretty much one of the best things that you can do for a city. I know that the roadway system in this country is in a great state of disrepair, so I do not think that the answer to our problems is investing in and adding more roadways and freeway lanes. I already can testify, personally, and as for several of my colleagues, that we do often choose to take mass transit over other options, and a lot of the times for a lot of my friends and colleagues, it is the only option. It has a major reason to do with why I came to Phoenix in the first place to continue my education. And it also is a major reason to do, how I get around and why I'm even here today. So I think to turn this down would be a great disservice to the public and the youth, who I personally think we are looking for these bikeable, walkable, mass transit kind of communities, and that's what we're coming to today. So I really hope that you guys would support this.
Thank you for taking the time to come here today and being very patient and providing that testimony. Ms. Barker, did you want to say you wanted X one part of the card? Please, no testimony or provided. Just which way did you want to mark it?
In opposition.
In opposition.
Respectfully. Thank you
so much. Any additional members of the public wish to provide testimony? I'll turn it over now to Councilwoman Williams, who was the chair of the subcommittee, and see if she has a motion to put on the table, see if there's a second, and then we'll have the members of the council have their opportunity to provide or ask questions or provide their statements. Please, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. But I want to make a couple comments first. I am very privileged to be the chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I also serve as the city's representative on the Metro Board and the RPTA. So I am very in tune on a regular basis on what's going on in public transit. I've become a strong believer that a great city has public transit, that it has many modes available for people who need better mobility, they need access to work, they need access to sporting events, whatever it may be. And I've also come to learn what a great economic development tool it is. It has already proven its worth, and I know the city has recently approved an economic development plan on how we are going to improve our sites that are available for future use by improving the infrastructure. From representing District 1, starts on the southern border at Northern, goes to New River Road on the west side of I-17. It also jogs over on the east side of I-17. And I have long been a strong supporter of continuing up 19th Avenue across Dunlap and getting the light rail to Metro Center, because I am convinced that's what will save Metro Center. Ideally, probably not in my lifetime, but hopefully in my grandson's, that it will be at ASU West going on further. I think it is very important that we make it available for the businesses and for students. But what really I like about this transportation plan is one of the biggest problems in my district. The streets are simply falling apart. And I have hounded and hounded staff, as you can tell by his smile, that we've got to have not only the neighborhood streets, but you talk about Thunderbird, you go Dunlap. I mean, you could just go boom, 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 right on up to New River Road practically, and they are falling apart. And there is nothing in sight that will be able to repair them or reconstruct them in a timely fashion. So I believe very strongly that this committee has done great work. It has taken everything into consideration for a transportation plan, not just a transit, but a transportation plan that includes all elements. And I'm going to make the motion that we send this forward to the voters for their approval. I move the Citizens Transportation Plan forward with the following modifications. Reduce the 0.75% of a sales tax to 0.70. That by doing that, we still hold the streets allocation whole as proposed and no reduction in the new transit routes. That the exclusion of the Camelback Road Phase 2 high-capacity transit project, we reduce the scope of the Northeast Extension high-capacity project by 1/3, and identify or research a shorter route to reach Paradise Valley Mall. That Phoenix will be responsible for utility relocation expenses. And I'm not saying that means that solely. It would be, you could look for other funding sources, but ultimately Phoenix has a responsibility. That the tax commence on January 1st, 2016, sunset on December 31st, 2050. And upon passage of the tax, the public transit system would be a spatial revenue fund, and the mayor and council would appoint a citizens committee made up of members of this transportation committee, as well as at least 2 members of the transit commission that we have, to have oversight of the expenditures and plans. That is my motion, Mayor.
All right, that is a motion. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
All right, now I'll turn to members of the council. Do you have questions on the motion? I'll turn to members of the council. Do they have any comments or questions? Councilwoman Gallego.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Councilwoman Williams for her longtime leadership on this particular issue. This is a very exciting time for our city, and I'm really looking forward to the economic development impacts that this will have. Before being elected to the Phoenix City Council, I had the pleasure of working in economic development, and I know how investments in infrastructure really do drive jobs and growth and higher wage jobs. And Mobile Mini was not the first conversation where a business wanted to come into our community because of this light rail system. I have the pleasure of representing many areas that are on the rail system and some areas that are not. And it is much easier to get businesses to come in, and we're just seeing much more interest. When I do business retention visits, a lot of the companies really early on will list that one of the reasons we're here is because of the rail system. Our employees like it, our visitors love it. And that's also true in other industries that aren't as permanent here. I'm a big supporter of the tourism industry. It's an important part of our economy. And when we bid for big conventions, people tell us, our folks don't want to drive. They just want to get off your airplane at your airport and come right down on the light rail system. They don't want to have to worry about getting lost or the expense of renting a car. And I've had the pleasure of pitching many conventions where they've said that that's a really important factor in whether they'll bring that investment to our community. So I think we can't forget the importance on the tourism side. It's also something that's very important for us to look more broadly, because this is not just a light rail. And we need to invest in all types of transportation. We need to invest in our road system. We need to invest, we have folks, including many students, who want to use bike lanes to get to work. We need bus lanes. It's so frustrating when I'm sitting on Thomas and it's like gridlock and you're there light after light and you see people, the bus is packed, but they're all reading and you're just sitting there. They're being productive and you're sitting in your car, being jealous of those people in the bus, which is very full, and I hope we'll be adding more buses because it is often so full. But I really am envious of them and that productivity. I also think it's important to people who don't have other options. I had a seizure in December of 2013 and lost my driver's license for a while, and it was really important to me to have this light rail system. I couldn't have gotten around without it, and I was blessed to work at City Hall and have a doctor's office and a hospital that were both on the light rail system, so I could get around. But not everyone has that option. And I talked to many residents in my district who say, we want to age in place, but right now the bus system doesn't go in my area, and it will, or the light rail system isn't there, and they don't have that option yet. This will give them that option, and it'll be important to our economy, and it'll be important to people who want to continue working but can't drive, or who are senior citizens and would prefer not to drive. It was a really eye-opening experience to me, and I was so glad to have that mass transit system. And I met many individuals. My doctor's office was near the Veterans Hospital. I met a gentleman, Master Sergeant John Bradley, who had asked me to help pay for his fare. And I'm still working to get to the point where our disabled veterans will not be paying for that fares, but that's not going to happen in the short term. At the time, he couldn't reach the pay station, and we're fixing that. And going forward, we're going to build ADA-compliant stations, which will honor our veterans. So glad that we're doing this. We really do need all kinds of options for all kinds of residents. Everyone on this council has voted for new development areas that already have terrible congestion. And I don't remember one of those plans that had helicopter pads. So we're going to be able to need people to get roads and transit and really get through. We have many areas where we can't expand the road anymore, and so we need some buses to take some cars off the road, or some light rail system. It's really going to have to be a comprehensive plan, and this is the first step in that way. I'm glad that we're including roads. I also hear about potholes and the conditions of our roads very regularly. I wish that our road system could support itself with user fees, but right now that's just not realistic. We can't just say, okay, we're going to have fees on cars that will support all of this, and I think we're unlikely to put toll roads along our city streets, so we're going to step up, and this will help address that issue because the people who use our roads, it just is not going to pay for itself. I think that people who don't ride the light rail are generally going to be glad for this economic engine. I represent many people who don't use the airport. They can't afford to, or I represent some families who are facing issues like a family member with autism and they just don't feel comfortable using that mode of transportation. But they're glad the airport is there. It's a huge economic engine, and the light rail system will be a huge economic engine, as it already is. I was trying to tally as everyone came in and said, we're investing $50 million. We're investing $500 million because of light rail system. And I think we got to check our numbers again. I think we got to be way past $7 billion in private sector investment, given some of the numbers we heard today, and we continue to hear. It's really been a success story, like our forethought to invest in the airport. It'll have bumps, like the airport does, but it's really city leaders stepping up and saying, we want to think long term, we want to invest in our infrastructure, we want to invest in our students who will overwhelmingly be using this. It's so exciting to see ASU, Grand Canyon University, University of Arizona. I've heard from our high school districts that they are excited about this and that their students are taking it. I've heard from our seniors. I think it's no surprise to some of the people on this dais that people do not love paying for parking downtown. And if you stop, particularly in my experience at the Camelback and Central light rail station at the Park and Ride, you will see seniors from District 1, District 2, District 3 who are parking. They're paying $1 senior fare or $2 round trip, and they're coming into downtown. It's the best time if you would like to meet some of these folks, I think, is before sporting games in particular, but some of the conventions and other things have brought those individuals down, and they say it makes downtown affordable. They're not going to pay for our parking garages, and they love that senior fare. I understand that a lot of my colleagues are concerned about fare recovery, but I support the senior fare, and I think it helps seniors age in place and be more involved in our community, enjoy the wonderful downtown community, get to the airport. So I think it's well thought out, and I look forward to supporting this.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions, and then I'll just give you a short statement on this. I think everyone's pretty much made up their minds of where they're going to go on this. And so there aren't any surprises. I've already asked staff this too. The fare recovery, including capital, I just want to get it on the record. What is that percentage, Maria?
Mayor Stanton, Councilman DeCiccio, we talked about this yesterday. So as an industry, the transit actually calculates it on an operating cost. And so when you do an operating cost for light rail, it's currently 40% of the fare recovery is fares or recover the cost of operations. But what you asked for, Councilman DeCiccio, was to include capital as well as operating for the full cost. And when we do that for light rail as well as for the bus system, and I didn't mention the fare recovery, when we look at just the passengers riding in Phoenix, we're at 29% fare recovery on our bus system. So when I combine those two, we're at, with capital and operating, we're at 19% fare recovery.
The total fare recovery, including capitalization, is 19%. I just want to get these on the record. It's real simple. You can give as long a response as you want. The other is, since we have the finalized numbers here, the total cost for the rail part is $6.6 billion. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilman.
And that's 41 miles that we anticipate to be built with that?
Well, yeah, Councilman, what we had, yes, approximately. Depending on what is approved as the final mode by the City Council on those lines, those extensions that have not been determined yet.
And when you do a division of 6.6 billion divided by 41 miles, it's $161 million a mile to build and operate the rail or the train, approximately.
Councilman, what the numbers that are included in here are based on the year of expenditure. We do know that the dollar continues to grow as it gets more expensive to build things in later years. And so in order for us to do a solid and balanced financial plan, we have calculated that in. But if you look at 2015 dollars, it costs $87.4 million a mile to build and $1.6 million to operate light rail.
Well, I'm just asking you. I mean, again, boy, I wish I could get staff to defend the stuff that I want to do that protects taxpayers the way the way staff defends those who want to spend a lot of money. I mean, Jim, you know what I'm talking about. It's just shocking to me. Maria, I'm just asking a simple question. $6.6 billion, you can explain it out however you want. Is that $161 million a mile that we're projecting to be the cost of the train?
Councilman, I'm sorry, I haven't done the math on that. I could run it real quick.
It is very important, though, to note year of expenditure dollars versus all lifetime. So it's a simple question, but the answer, to be totally accurate, we do need to give those caveats.
Okay, what's the number? I mean, you got a calculator right there. I just want to get it on the record.
Sorry, Councilman, I left my phone back there so it wouldn't
That's
ring.
okay. I got some more questions that we talked about already.
Yeah, 157.
Okay. And then the question for public safety, I want to put this thing to bed too. There's going to be $16 million transferred from the transit to the public safety. Ed, this question is you for the city manager. Is there anything other than this one here? Let's say that the police officers get their $16 million. Is there anything that binds a future city council from taking that $16 million from another area?
Well, the City Council has adopted last week, as you remember, a policy saying that should this pass, that $16 million that currently is general fund to transit would be freed up, and it's the policy of this council that will be $16 million applied to police. So certainly a city council is not bound, any future city council is not bound by a past city council. What I would tell you, though, is once we hire $16 million worth of police officers, if the council were to choose to do something else with that $16 million, we would either be laying off police officers or having to find some other sorts of revenue for it. But to your question, no, the council is not bound by a past council.
Right, and then I just want to make sure that gets on the record. And the other is, that still doesn't
Mayor,
get us
Councilman
up to the
DeCiccio, let me just
attrition level.
mention that the $16 million that was part of Councilwoman Williams' motion, it will be clear in what is voted on no, I'm not. It wasn't. You mentioned making the transit fund separate, and so that $16 million will not be in the transit fund. That is crystal clear. How you allocate it is a separate question.
Right. So I mean, whatever this council may promise, a future council can literally say we've decided to use it for something else, especially since we're not even up to the attrition levels, and that 125 doesn't even get us up to where we are at the attrition level being short. We're just not up to that. It still wouldn't get us there. This council could easily say, well, we made a decision to reallocate those funds somewhere else, and I wanted to get that on the record. Ray, Dovalina, how many cars a day does an arterial street generally put on? How many cars a day on an arterial street?
Mayor and Councilman, typically it runs between 35,000 to 45,000 average daily traffic.
And then that would be just a basic arterial street. And then how many people travel on a neighborhood street, like in front of my house kind of a thing?
Mayor and Councilman, typically that would be, I'm sorry?
Approximately.
Approximately, that would probably be in more of a local street. You're probably looking at less than 2,000 a day. So that range, less than 2,000.
And thank you. And then so it goes back to Maria. The comment you made that the ridership is about 28,000 per day. I think that's the same number you gave Shane yesterday. We have about 13 miles of rail right now. That comes out to about a little over 2,000 people per mile within the city of Phoenix. So I want people to understand you're going to be spending $160 million per mile on a rail system that generates about the same amount of traffic that you would get in front of your home on your local street. That is where the cost of this is going to go. The other is, if I could, and then I'm just basically giving my comments and I'll wrap it up. I've already promised Laura Pastor I was going to keep it quick. And I'm going to. On the education front, Mr. Clark brings up a really good point. Taxpayer dollars are not finite. They're not finite. That means you only have a limited amount of dollars. For anybody who supports higher education, anyone who supports education in our community, when the city of Phoenix passes this tax, the likelihood of you getting more monies for education for teachers is almost zero. Matter of fact, there was an editorial in the Arizona Republic talking about that this weekend. So when you pass something this big at $33 billion, you're going to have less money for teachers in the future. To the police department that are here, I see a couple of the police officers. You are being led down a path of false promises again. And the question I have for you is, you've already seen how this council has treated you in the past year. Do you trust that this council is going to do everything it can in the future to protect you? Simple question you just need to ask yourself. To the citizens of Phoenix, the city council, this city cannot even handle its current budget. What makes taxpayers think that giving $33 billion to a structurally unsound organization is a good idea? We have a budget deficit next year, the year after. We almost had one this year. It is a structurally unsound financial structure here at the city of Phoenix. Why should you give us $33 billion? That is the question you need to ask yourself. Thank you, Mayor. I'm done.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman, you have something? I apologize. Please,
They're a little bit
please.
related, and I should have asked them earlier. The highway funds, did that include operational costs when you said $90 million per mile?
Mayor and Councilwoman, no, that's only for the construction and right-of-way estimates that they're looking at right now for that new freeway, proposed freeway.
So if we added operational costs, it would
be at
much
additional
higher.
costs.
And you said 80 to 90 million.
That's for the construction and right-of-way per
And
mile.
I do not, I know it's not popular with everyone in this room, but I, unlike some other people, I'm a supporter of the 202 freeway and certainly want to see highways, but I think we need all types of transportation, and we ought to have a dialogue that compares apples to apples. And so we ought to ask ourselves, so what % of our streets are paid for by user fees?
Mayor and Councilwoman, typically with our gas state share revenues, we use about $22 million for our overlay program. That's typically what we use for our major streets and our collectors and local streets. As you can imagine, as some of the discussions have talked about, is that that's basically not enough to carry what we need to be doing as a transportation department to maintain those roads. So those are elements, as well as other elements that we have in our budget to cover preventive maintenance, other elements that support maintenance of that infrastructure.
Right. So I just think we need to be honest that if we should compare as much as we can, and that capital costs are a key thing. And we've learned a lot. I think Marty mentioned, as we've done light rail, we've learned a lot about things like utility costs that have brought down the lines. So I understand that the Mesa extension was $65 million per mile. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilwoman Gallego, the current extension out in Mesa is a 3-mile extension at about 199. They're about 65 million, and they're extending 2 more miles. And a big part of that, in comparison to some of the other extensions, was right-of-way impacts as well as utility impacts. So yes, we are doing better. It's a different cost there.
Right. So as we learn and as we do this, we can look at doing it more efficiently, and I think that's good news, and that we ought to keep that in mind.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilwoman Gallego, for example, the South Central extension was mentioned several times today, both by the council as well as members of the community. And some of the things that we're looking at from a planning and design perspective would do just that, to help us bring that project in as cost effective as possible.
Great. I think that's good news and very responsible, and we ought to continue to. And discussion of utility costs, I have a question for Rick. The councilwoman's motion was that we would pay for utility costs as the city of Phoenix. Does that motion allow, should there be a Prop 500, to also have other sources?
If it is the council's intent to do that, absolutely yes. I mean, that would be what we are assuming as the basic. That's what would happen unless that funding wasn't available.
Wonderful.
That's the way I interpreted what her motion was, but I want to make sure
so
that
it could be a series of sources, not just
right. I think the point here is that when we do a light rail project, the relocation costs for utilities will be paid for out of the project costs.
Right. And I had the pleasure of speaking with the Phoenix Chamber, and they said we addressed that. They were very supportive because this is an economic engine, and that they really did want to see a multimodal system. So I just think we ought to have an honest conversation about the numbers, and that these are complex. And we've made decisions like that impact fare recovery, like the senior fare. And so I think we should continue to have that senior fare. And my question for Councilman DeCiccio, is that something you want to go away? Do you want to renew the tax even at the 4-cent level? Or which, if we didn't do that, I think we would lose a lot of the circulators and the rapid. Do you support the rapid from Ahwatukee?
No. Matter of fact, I think it needs to be charged, and I've mentioned this to Councilman Nowakowski before. Nothing should be free like that. It was one of those gotcha things that they tried to do here on the council quite a bit, and they tried doing that with the police issue too, but they got caught doing that. Here's the deal: when you look at transit, it doesn't come up until 2020. There's no reason to rush through this $33 billion boondoggle is what it's going to be. There's no rush on this thing. Give it some time, let our economy recover, allow the taxpayers to recover. So now you're going to impose this hefty tax on the taxpayers. You're going to move it forward. Nothing has to happen this year on this thing. Why don't you see what happens with the economy? Then make the determination. Get something that's more thought out. Something that's, I'm just curious as how many people are on the committee that were here. Can you raise your hand? How many of you rode light rail here? Okay, 2, 3 of you, 4. Okay, so 4 of you rode the light rail here. Would you guys? Everyone else took a car, or walked. Okay, so I mean, okay.
Takes all
the
solutions.
Transit crowd, yeah.
There isn't one answer.
What you have here, what you end up having here, and this is the Councilman Gallego with these gotcha questions. The bottom line is this: is that you've got to wait, you've got to see what's going to happen in this economy. You're talking about this is going to be the future of basically transportation. You're going to be able to push it in. It's like an Uber or a Lyft. Even the taxi companies are moving to that. This is the direction of the future, not a fixed rail system that is outdated and doesn't work. It's the same train that you had back in the 1800s. You're building that today.
Councilwoman, did you want to continue with your statement? I apologize. Do you want to continue?
We talked about why the timing for this. I have a question for Marty. Do you think having the certainty that the tax will be renewed will spur more private sector reinvestment and help our economy recover?
Mayor, Councilwoman Gallego, absolutely.
So I think it's just fair that we have an honest debate and that there's two sides of these things. I don't mean to be a gotcha, but we have to be honest about why we have the fair recovery we do, and it's policy decisions that we want to make it easier for our seniors to age in place. And we should have an honest discussion. There are definitely trade-offs, and we have a diverse council, but we will go forward and we will have a robust debate, and that is healthy for this community. Thank you, Mayor.
Very much, Councilman Nowakowski.
You know, Mayor, first of all, I just really want to thank all the committee members, the 34 members that served on this committee. My wife back in 2000 sat on the Transit 2000. I know how many hours it takes away from the family time. And just really having over 100 meetings and touching over 3,700 people and engaged in this conversation is just incredible. And really thinking about not just transit, but also, you know, our new bike routes and improving our streets that we have, sidewalks that we have, you know, the bridges, all those infrastructure issues that we have that we need to look at. So it's not just about light rail, folks. It's about all of that. It's about making sure that the ADA compliance is everywhere. You know, individuals that are in wheelchairs, that they have access to our buses and to our light rails and to even to get on a sidewalk. And it's just incredible things that we overlook on a daily basis that other people need, right? So I just really want to thank you all and for the improvements of our signs too. If you drive around in my district, I know I get a lot of calls that these signs, you can't even, they're all worn out and that we need to replace the signs. And a lot of people are talking about traffic lights, just putting in traffic lights and crosswalks and in busy streets. So those kind of things. So, you know, this was really an effort that people sat down and thought about. They thought about even using what, Sal, you were talking about, technology, you know, from the phones that we have, from the iPads, and future technology also. And one of the things I really want to thank you all for taking really what I call that Team Phoenix approach, where you bring all the different departments together. It wasn't just our transportation, it was our public safety, it was all the different departments coming together, and they're all benefiting from this. And really the winners in this is the residents of the city of Phoenix. So I just really want to thank you all for your hard work, and I'll be supporting this.
Thank you very much, Councilman Gates.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank my appointees to the commission, Mr. Federer, Ms. Scheer, and Mr. Bailey, who are all here, by the way, so stuck it out to the very end and did some incredible work on this. You know, this, as far as I'm concerned, we can't spend too much time on this issue. The food tax, which I don't know how many meetings I've been involved in and how many votes I've taken on the food tax since 2010, it's going to end up generating about $220 million. This tax that's being presented before us today is going to generate about $18.1 billion. So I said this in subcommittee, and I'll say it here again. There's probably no more important vote that's made and no bigger issue than the issue that we're grappling with here today. And so I appreciate the seriousness with which the commission has worked on this, and staff for all your work. And a couple of subcommittee meetings, but I think it helped actually to flesh out a lot of what we're discussing today. We've seen some reductions already in the motion that was made by Councilwoman Williams based upon some of the discussions. One thing I'd like to raise and potentially offer as a friendly amendment to the motion maker was the Able station. There's been a lot of discussion of that before this council. I wonder if she might consider adding that to the motion because I think it makes sense. Like I said, it's something that's definitely needed. So I would offer that to her.
Are you referring to the Washington 44th Street? Yeah. I would have no objections of making that a priority as you go forward.
I think what Mr. Pangrazio asked for is that I think the funding for it is included. There is capacity to do it. I think what he asked for is make sure that we emphasize that it is the intent of this council to ask the voters to make it specific that Able would get a station for the Disability Empowerment Center there, including SPOFIT, and that was the request, and so that was the request, and she's accepted it. Does the second accept the friendly amendment?
Yes.
Councilman Gates, keep going.
I appreciate the work that Mr. Federher has done on the streets subcommittee, and I think that's important that that's a part of this. But I just want to understand, just make sure we understand what this means when we talk about streets. So, Mr. Dovellini, you said right now we're spending about $22 million a year on overlay, because I think that's, I think when a lot of us think, when people call us, they're talking about quote unquote the crumbling streets. Is that right? So about $22 million now?
Yes, sir.
And if this tax were to pass, how much more would be added to that?
Mayor and Councilman Gates, this would be doubling of that overlay program, and so we would be looking at doubling that aspect of the overlay program.
Okay, so what's that total over the life of the tax?
I don't have the number right up. 750.
Rick's on his calculator.
Yeah. If it's $22 million a year over 30 years.
30 years.
Even I can do that math. That's $660 million.
Okay.
And just to add, there is as well as increasing funding as the tax progresses in the future. So with regards to the funding allocation, as we get funding for that. So.
Okay. So of the total $2.4 billion on streets, $660 million is going to the overlay.
That would be the estimate. Again, it could be more than that. Ultimately.
Okay, so the rest is on other things.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's clear. I think I agree with Councilman Gallego that we need to have an honest debate. We need to have an honest discussion. And my concern with where we're at, it's been a great process, but where we're at is an all or nothing situation right now. We're looking at either nearly a doubling of tax or nothing. And so there were a lot of discussions today about the value that people see in light rail, but all those things are happening right now. All those things would happen in these areas under some other number, say at a 0.4 or something like that. So given the fact that the only option that I have today is to vote on the 0.7, I believe, for a lot of the reasons that have been said by some of my colleagues, that it's too much at this time and, frankly, too early for me. So appreciate the efforts that have been put into this and the passion that people have had for it, but I will be voting against this today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Gates, very much. Councilman Valenzuela?
Fortunately, we did get the Washington stop in the motion. I think that's incredibly important. It would have been nice to get unanimous support. I don't think we're going to get that, though. Look, according to MAG, by 2020, there will be more than 4.5 million Valley residents. We're growing at a pretty fast rate. Think about that. Think about what that means for the Valley and for our city. Not only do we need new streets and new sidewalks, what we currently have, we need to take care of. We need to keep it up. We need to repair them. We had some great comments from some of the business interests there on 19th Avenue in District 5, and that just kind of gave a snapshot of what it meant to bring light rail on 19th Avenue. It's infrastructure, aging infrastructure. And even if we'd never thought of putting light rail on 19th Avenue, we would still have to repair that infrastructure at some point. These pipes are going to burst at some point. And, when I think of District 5 in particular, and I'm not supporting this just because of District 5, okay? I'm supporting this because this is good for the city. I'm supporting this just as I supported, CIP budgets, capital improvement project budgets for new streets throughout the city of Phoenix when very little of that was actually going into District 5. It's good for the city. But District 5 is very dense, aging infrastructure, and this means street repair. It means filling potholes. It means lighting. About a third of this new tax goes to improving those types of things. It also means, again, building new streets, perhaps bridges, getting light rail to places like Metro Center, getting light rail to places like GCU, where they currently have approximately 10,000 students and growing, places that will go by Alhambra High School, for an example, where they have it's the most diverse high school in the state. These kids need transportation. I really appreciate Councilmember Tripkin's comments here. Who is taking this public transit in the first place? Okay, some people have to take public transit. But what about the people that want to take public transit? At some point, don't we want to be, I'd like for Phoenix to be this city that, if you choose to not have a vehicle, that's okay. There's a few of those cities out there right now, Denver and Boston, New York City. If you choose not to have a vehicle, that's okay. We aspire to be a multimodal city. It means we have to make an investment. And by the way, if we don't do this, well, let me go back for just a moment. Let me talk about 19th Avenue for just another moment here. 3.2-mile stretch, 1,500 jobs, on top of it all. It's going to connect 20,000 people to the rest of these places where light rail is now connecting throughout the valley. We talked about the job growth with this program, the tens of thousands of jobs, construction jobs, that come with this program. And after those jobs, who knows what high-wage sector jobs will be following? We all know that infrastructure is weighed heavily on the minds of CEOs and boards that are out there when it's time to land or relocate their company, their employees, and all of their families to a place like Phoenix, for an example. This is incredibly important. It's one of the most important votes, I think, that we can vote on. Certainly in my 3 years, 3 months on the City Council, this is one of the most important votes that I will be casting, and I'm supporting it. Obviously, I'm fully supporting it. I do appreciate the motion and the amendment to the motion. Okay, SPOFIT is right down the way there on Washington, and it's been discussed over and over and over. I was there for a Fit Phoenix event two and a half years ago, and they were talking about the potential of getting a stop there and the importance of having a stop there. So I do appreciate that amendment. I appreciate that Councilwoman Williams, that you are actually made the motion for .70. I think it's a responsible motion, and again, I fully support it.
Thank you very much, Councilman Valenzuela. Councilwoman Pastor.
I would like to thank everybody that participated really in a healthy discussion about transit, and the committee that was put together was very diverse in many different ways and in philosophical ways. So I like the fact that it was transparent and that voices were heard, and there was a great discussion. For me, ultimately, what's building a vibrant city? What does a vibrant city look like? What are the cities that we aspire to be and get there? One of it, for me, a vibrant city is safety. Safety of the neighborhoods, the safety of the areas that we are, of the city. It's also strong economic development. Strong economic development to me means connectivity, engagement, people wanting to live in their city and wanting to meet their neighbor and connect with one another. And ultimately, it's also a public-private partnership in building the city. And that is something that we have to look at and really push for, of a private-public partnership in the way we go into the future and how we survive with all our great ideas of a vibrant city. And so I'm supportive of this transit proposition, and I'm supportive of it because I want to see a vibrant city. I want to build our city. I want to be part of building the city. But ultimately, it's up to the voters. And it's the voters who are going to vote on this and determine if this is what they want for the future. And so I'm very much supportive of this. Thank you, Councilwoman Williams, for your leadership in bringing this to the table and helping us get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Vice Mayor. Do you have one final statement or thought or question?
Question. So annual ridership, this page, shows that annual ridership of bus and rail combined has dropped from 2008 to 2009 to 2013, 2014. It also seems to indicate to me that people who used to ride the bus are now riding the rail. And that looks like it got capped at about, it's been pretty static for the last 4 years for which you have data, and it looks like it stopped at about 7.5 million riders, or passengers, I guess you call them. Are those true statements?
Vice Mayor, you are correct. We have seen a slowing in the growth. In fact, it's been stagnant the last year. And what you've really seen is you've seen that nationwide with numbers, and a lot of that, at least here in the Valley, has been with the population. With the Great Recession, we did see a decrease in population. In fact, one of the questions that came up in the Citizen Committee, Roy brought this up, and he asked about the 7th Street and 7th Avenue and whether we had seen an increase in traffic. And Streets actually did the analysis to see that we hadn't seen an increase in traffic on either one of those streets, with light rail being on Central Avenue. And a lot of that was because we haven't seen, we saw a decrease in population here in Phoenix with the Great Recession. But we also do, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add to clarify, Mayor, Vice Mayor Waring, a lot of that has to do with if you're not employed, you're not going to and from work every day. Those are the kinds of things that the transit population data people talk about. And so during the recession, there were also fewer trips among the same population. There's less going out and shopping, and there's less that kind of activity is happening.
So then you would also refute the statistic where 10.5% drop. There was, I believe, they were claiming a 10.5% drop. I believe it was Diane Brown was claiming a 10.5% drop in car trips. Well, so that same logic would apply then. We can't brag about light rail redirecting people to light rail and off the roads if we're then going to say, well, that hasn't gone up at all, but it was a recession and people aren't going to work. Just want to make that point, because again,
things all work together.
Yeah. So all right. So ridership hasn't gone past about 7.5 million. It's been pretty static for a few years. Are we at capacity with light rail, or is that simply a function of people are riding it who want to ride it and the rest of us aren't?
Vice Mayor, we continue to see an increase in light rail ridership. You mentioned that you thought that maybe people had moved from transit, bus.
I mean, that's what I would take away from this.
And you're right, because the initial 20-mile line was what we called the red line, for those of you who've lived here for a long time. And that was our busiest bus line in the past. But what I can tell you is that we have seen a 5 times increase in the ridership from what was the exact same line when it was a bus with light rail. So we have seen a significant increase that we haven't seen necessarily on the bus side with what we've seen on the 20-mile light rail line.
Again, I'm not, to Sal's point earlier, I guess I'm not sure. Total bus and rail, just so the listeners at home are clear, total bus and rail ridership is down.
Slightly
it's down from 2012 to 2013, it went down. And really, it's been bouncing around in a margin for years. It's about the same. Before we had light rail, it's up, but it's not up that much. And our population has gone up. I've seen the census figures. We just had a thing in the paper recently about that. So the population is up. So I guess I can't speak to the employment, but I think unemployment is down. We got more people in the city. Nobody seems to be using this to the extent that we would expect, given the amount of money we're spending on this. I talked about how, in a previous comment in response to a speaker, people in my district are going to have to drive to a light rail stop. So there was a comment about we're not going to have to build as many parking spaces and so forth. Well, maybe some places that's true, but that's certainly not You're going to have to build parking spaces at the light rail stop to have people park, to have enough people on your light rail to have an impact at all. So I just wanted to comment on that. About I guess I don't know, it concerned me that we don't know what percentage of people are being moved by light rail on a daily or monthly or yearly basis. It sounded, I never, as Leonard Clark said, I don't think I ever really got an answer to that. Becky Fenger apparently has a study. She doesn't do this for a living that I know about. You guys do, so maybe you could ask her for the site. She cited 1%. Diane Brown mentioned the drop in driving, so I guess she also must have a study. I'm assuming nobody was making those numbers up. So if you guys could kind of check with them, but I am a little bit surprised that there's no number out there that was even a ballpark figure. As far as the police item that's in here, it is not a reason to vote for this. I'm voting against it. But I did vote for the item last week because, frankly, I would much rather have money spent hiring police officers than on light rail based on these charts and what I've seen presented today. So I'm voting against it. I'll be voting against it personally. I'll be encouraging my friends to vote against it. However, if it does pass, which it may or may not, I'm happy to have the $16 million redirected, so I hope we follow through on that. To Councilman DeCicio's point, long term, I hope nobody's going to change that in the future. Hiring police officers, to my mind, it's probably the most important thing we do as a city. So a chance to move something that I don't think is moving enough people and is being pretty inflexible and expensive in its doing, I guess I would like to see it spent more on police. So that explains my vote on that amendment, even though I'm voting against the thing in general. Just for the folks who came down and spoke about downtown, and sort of indicate I'm too parochial or looking out for my own district and so forth. First, I was elected by those folks, so I feel a certain sense of obligation. Please remember that if you're walking to the light rail stop from your house, or if you or your business is right on the light rail, you don't have anything in common with the people in my district. None of the people in my district are doing that. Their businesses, if they have a business up in the district, in my district, are not, it's not on their route, so forth. But guess what they're doing? They're paying the taxes that are funding this. Just like we're paying the taxes that subsidize the golf courses that aren't our district, my district, and so forth. So I can't speak for other people who are further away than downtown, but I understand the enthusiasm of the people who live downtown. I understand the students. I get all that because somebody else is helping foot the bill for their easy access to public transportation. But take me, for example. 20 years from now, you put the thing at Paradise Valley Community College, or Paradise Valley Mall. That's great, because I live on Cactus, so I can scoot down there. Heck, I might actually ride it if I have reason to go down to a ball game. But most of my district's going to take them 25, 30 minutes just to drive to my house. It's all north of me. So they're going to have a nice long drive to get these parking spaces. We're going to have to build, I guess, to get all these people onto the light rail so they can take their trip downtown. It's not quite as good a deal when you look at it from that perspective. So those who were critical of me, oh well. I mean, I guess I'm looking at it from a totally different perspective that apparently didn't translate at all. But please try to think a little bit outside the box of what a lot of the rest of us are dealing with. Most people, their business isn't on the light rail line. Most people aren't walking to the light rail stop. Most people aren't biking to work, or certainly not in District 2, they're not anyway. There are probably some people, I'm sure there's some who ride it, but just something to think about. So I'm voting against this. I could probably question all day some of the statistics I heard, but it is a pretty hefty tax increase for what we're getting. Considering this thing doesn't run out in 5 years, I appreciate Marty Schultz's comments, and I appreciate your work. I've known both of you for years, and obviously work with our staffers every day. But appreciate the work you put into this. It's not a criticism of your work at all, in any way. But it is something. I feel like might take a little more time. Look at this a little differently. But I appreciate the efforts of everybody in the council who worked on this too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I'll just make a short statement, then we'll. Councilman Valenzuela,
one quick moment,
please.
First and foremost, and I should have just said this very first. Thank you so much. I want to every member of the volunteer committee. Thank you so much for all of the countless hours that you put in. City staff, thank you so much for doing this. Anyone and everyone who took part in a survey. Every constituent, every resident, every visitor, thank you for helping us get to this point. Marty Schultz, thank you for representing District 5. Everyone else in District 5 is almost as cool as Marty Schultz. Almost. It's still so we do have a pretty cool district, right? Marty's wife is even more cool than Marty. I want to just make a quick comment, you know, and I respect every member of this council. We don't, you know, we're going to disagree from time to time. I appreciate this particular debate and conversation because, you know, it's respectful. But I do disagree with the last comments that were made. I will tell you, if you look at the CIP budget for new streets, there was far less in that budget in District 5, a more dense district, than that of, say, District 2. Far less. But the people of District 5 are paying those taxes. And I support that CIP. The people of downtown Phoenix are paying those taxes for new streets that will go in other parts of the city. It's part of being in this community. It's part of together creating a world-class city. It's all relative. And I just wanted to make that point.
Have a response to that?
All right. Vice Mayor, do you have a very short response to that, please?
I have a very short response.
You've had plenty of time to make
I have had plenty of time. I appreciate the time,
please.
as always. Thank you.
I think
You're
it's
very
getting
respectful,
late.
and I appreciate
we
that.
Want to
but I will
make
say,
final statements and make a vote,
I think
please.
the streets issue, Ray, if I remember your numbers, or no, Andy did it in his head. He's like Mr. Spock in that respect, apparently. But, well, not exactly like him. I was trying to make a timely...
Live long and prosper,
all
Mr.
right.
Ware.
So in any case, I think the figure was $660 million over the life of this for street repair. Not all of it in District 2 by any stretch of the imagination. Divide by 8. And then add some, because as he mentions, we get more. Ray, I call your office all the time about the state of the streets. But I will say the $660 million, how much is being spent on light rail in this project? Or this proposal, excuse me?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, typically what we've been looking at with just construction of light rail, and Albert and Maria can attest to this, is that we would be looking at light rail construction to ultimately look at the reconstruction of that corridor depending on the limits of the construction, and then we would look at our funding to look at how do we connect to that light rail corridor. I'll pass it on to...
I guess maybe you misunderstand the question. I'm just asking... I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm asking how much of the $33 billion is being spent on light rail. I mean, I think it's about, is it a quarter? So I can do that math in my head. In any case, it's in the billions with a B.
Well, it would be probably more, it would certainly be less than $660 million. It probably would be around...
There'd be less money spent on light rail than there are on repaving streets.
With regards to what...
Mayor, Councilman Waring...
Thank you very much, Mr. Neymar. Can we clear this up? It would be very clear if we clear this up. Thank you very much.
It's a pretty simple question. I mean,
first of all, the amount of money in this program for streets is $2.4 billion, not $660 million. The $660 million is simply the overlay dollars, the street maintenance dollars. So it's $2.4 billion, which is about 30% of the increment, the addition of the tax. So a full 0.1% of the 0.33 addition goes to 0.3 addition will go to streets. The second question was, how much is in there for light rail? And Maria, I'm going to ask you for the answer to the light rail construction number.
The construction number?
That's, I think, what you asked.
Or did you want the total cost?
I'm actually asking total cost.
Let me just say this. Of the increment, 25% goes to light rail, 30% goes to street improvements.
All right, so the $660 million is the overlay, which really is what I'm concerned with. But
$2.4 billion of the increment, which is a little more than a third, will go to street improvements. With the 0.7, you're adding 0.3, and 0.1 of that goes to streets.
What was that middle part? What, no fish called Wanda? Oh, one. Oh, Bill Councilman Gates, good. I'll tell you what, why don't we have a meeting in my office, and you can put all that down, Well, I might review this tape too to see all the different things that were thrown around, because a lot of them seem a little contradictory, like light rail riding and bus riding is going up when you handed me a chart showing it's going down. And you can see it's going down, but then you're talking about how more people are using it. It seems counterintuitive to me, probably to the audience's home as well. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I just want to say thank you to the members of the committee, Mary Peters in particular. She's an incredibly busy person, an incredibly successful person, particularly in the area of transportation. I would politely argue that no one is more well respected as a transportation leader and advocate than Mary Peters, having served as the head of the Arizona Department of Transportation under Governor Hull, and then served as Secretary of Transportation under President George Bush. And we're lucky that she's a local person. And so I was happily surprised when she accepted the offer to chair this committee, and she put in the hours and the analysis and the research. She does her own homework and her own research and provides that leadership. And Marty, to you and to your co-chair, Maria Beyer, all members of the committee, a job well done, a very thorough job on a very, very difficult topic. And I do appreciate that the balanced approach that the committee took, ensuring that such a significant percentage of the transportation plan would be in street maintenance improvements and repairs, which of course is going to benefit all parts of the city, from the far west valley to the far east valley to the furthest point south in Phoenix to the furthest points north in Phoenix. I appreciate your balanced approach in ensuring that we are going to significantly increase rapid. That's the bus rapid transit, which is tremendously popular to get people who live in the far north regions of the city or the far southern reaches of the Phoenix to their jobs as quickly as possible. I appreciate the fact that the committee insisted that improvements to bus rapid transit, including throughout the business day, so it's not just during rush hour, were included in the plan. And I also really appreciate that you made such a commitment to Dial-A-Ride. People who are living with disabilities in the community, it is tragic, the unemployment rates, and the fact that Dial-A-Ride and other mobility improvements are going to improve the lives of people throughout this city, wherever they happen to live. And I think the committee was very thoughtful in their approach in ensuring that all of the transportation needs. This is a transportation plan, a comprehensive transportation plan that was adopted by this committee and maybe adopted here tonight, and if so, will be put on the ballot. And this is probably the most important, one of the most important, certainly, decisions that will come before this council during my 8 years as mayor. We know that a robust transportation system is critically important to so many people. Phoenix voters changed lives when it approved Transit 2000, changed lives for the better. It helped transit-dependent residents get to work, the grocery store, their doctor's appointments. Transit gives real freedom to people in our community who happen to have disabilities. It helps students get to class. And the success that we have seen with our 17 miles of light rail and areas of greater bus service, I want to see that in more places in this city. Yes, public transportation improves the quality of life in Phoenix, but it also improves our economy. A strong transit system is one of our greatest economic development tools. Look at what has happened in Phoenix since voters made that wise investment back in 2000. University campuses, and I know we had multiple universities here in support of this transportation plan. University campuses will bring more than 17,000 students downtown by 2020, and those would not have happened without the wise investment of the Phoenix voters in Transit 2000. Critical commercial centers such as Cityscape and reinvestments in our community such as Lure Center simply would not occur without a strong commitment to transportation. The development of our urban core with mixed-use facilities, high-density residential, won't happen without the strong commitment of the people of Phoenix to transportation. Obviously, large-scale events like happened with Super Bowl experience in the heart of the city simply don't happen without our support for a great transportation system in Phoenix. If you want to know about the success of public transportation, yes, you can look here in Phoenix, but you can also look to our friends in Tempe and in Mesa as well. Arguably the most conservative city in America. They brag about that. Whose business leaders and residents, they want light rail and great transportation in their city too. Here in Phoenix, light rail ridership is way above our projections, more than we ever expected at this time. And of course, if you look over since Transit 2000, bus ridership is up significantly. And during rush hour, when people are getting to and from work, those buses are full, and we need more of them so that people can get to their jobs. We have to plan for our future, and decisions we make today will matter for decades to come. And we have to prepare for growth. We have to stop congestion on our freeways from getting worse. So I owe a huge thank you to those leaders on the Citizen Committee. I believe you've come up with an excellent plan for our future. And you recognize that as important as light rail is, great transportation planning is also comprehensive. It's more than just about rail. While a quarter of this plan is dedicated to light rail, even more is dedicated to improved bus routes, including extending the hours of our bus transportation system. And more than in the light rail side of it, and the transportation side, is set aside to improve our aging streets and roadways, because that is important to our economy and our growth as well. So I believe you've done a great job, and I will be supporting Councilwoman Williams' motion. Roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio? Councilwoman Gallego?
Yes.
Councilman Gates?
No.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes.
Councilman Valenzuela?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Waring? No. Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Mayor Stanton?
Yes, so the motion passes by a 6-3 motion. Again, thank you to the members of the committee. Excellent presentation. This meeting is now adjourned.